County Hall in Newport, Isle of Wight. Just like to firstly go on to apologies and change the membership. I'll do the change of membership first. So Councillor Quirk is unable to be with us, and we welcome Councillor Ed Blake. Welcome, Ed. And we've got a full-time change in membership. Councillor Brodie will no longer be joining us on the committee, and we have welcomed Councillor Dave Adams. So nice to see you, Dave. Thank you. And I do believe I've seen Councillor Fuller, so he's on his way down. So I do believe we have a full house. So just going to go through the minutes of the last meeting between pages 5 and 10. Everybody satisfied? Is there a true record? Councillor Stewart?
Sorry, there was some discussion about the report on the Horsebridge Hill diversion from July. No, not the next one, the previous one. And there was going to be a report on the outcomes from that, recommendations from that. I think that was back from August, and it's still going. I just wonder whether we've got any further on releasing that.
Yes, because I think Mrs. Love has prepared a document.
Yeah, we have so it was agreed that we would do a lessons learned table, and that has been circulated. I had circulated it to the chair, so apologies, I hadn't circulated it to the rest of the committee, but I will get that done tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah. Definitely.
Yes, Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, just to say in addition that lessons learned paper will also form the basis of supporting the next piece of work that's been done with Southern Water. So we fed through to Southern Water the information, and it features some of their questions and answers as well for that scheme.
Okay, can I just add, I'm very grateful for the enormous amount of work that Michelle Love did on that, regular meetings and all of the sort of background approach to it. So thank you very much for that.
So anything else on the minutes then, members? No? So if we'd like to, so all those in favour? That's everybody, that's nearly everybody. Against, abstention? Councillor Adams, you're abstaining, are you? Because you weren't here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Is that okay, Sarah? Yeah, got that. Yeah, thank you. So we're going to move on. So sorry, yeah, of course I will. Sorry. Best bit of the meeting, isn't it? Thank you. So declarations of interest. If anyone members got anything like this to declare related to matters on the agenda, I have one. I might as well start off. So in the economic plan, we all see tourism is a big section in that. So it's a non-pecuniary interest, as I'm the representative of the Isle of Wight Council on Visit Isle of Wight, and I'm a director of Visit Isle of Wight. That's according to their article of association. And also in a smaller way, I am vice chair of Newport Business Association. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, I'll go around the table. Councillor Adams. None for you. Councillor Adams.
I've no interest at all, except that I had a complaint come in about the validity of me attending this meeting. And I'd like to say on the basis that I may be predetermined, but I've taken advice and I'm satisfied that whilst I may be predisposed, I've not predetermined the matter regarding the TROs.
Very much, Councillor Adams. Appreciate that. Councillor Beston.
Yeah, of course, non-pecuniary interest that, as regards to the strategy, the section on tourism, which I've got a valid interest in because I run and own my own tourist-related business.
Anyone else? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Stewart.
Just to say, as part of the economic strategy, it does mention creative industries, and my wife is a professional artist who sells and exhibits on the island, but it's a non-pecuniary interest for me.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Thank you. Right, so we've got public question time, and I do have some written questions, so I'll go to those first before we go to the gallery. So the first question I have is from Yarmouth Town Council to the chair. I've been asked by Yarmouth Town councillors to table a question for the next meeting of the committee about hazardous road areas in Yarmouth. One is the Baskets Lane, Tennyson Road junction, where parking to the west of the junction obscures oncoming traffic from that direction. And one accident has already occurred in this area. The other hazard is in the High Street near its junction with the other end of Baskets Lane, where on-street parking causes such narrowing of the road that larger vehicles such as vans and HGVs can barely get through. I would like the question raised of how these two hazards can be mitigated. That's from Yarmouth Town Council. It's the response, which has been prepared by officers, and I'm very grateful for the hard work that goes into bringing these responses. It can be very complex sometimes. Parking restrictions are implemented via traffic regulation orders. The island is divided into 6 districts for the purpose of these orders, and these are reviewed on a rolling annual basis. Requests for the addition or removal of parking restrictions are assessed and cross-referenced against casualty data to develop a list of priority sites, which are then included in the district review TRO. The Baskets Lane site was added to the list for the review in November 2023. The cut-off for this district review was April 2023. Casualty data was reviewed at the time of the request, and there has been no recorded collisions in the 5 years prior to this request. This will be reviewed again when the next District 6 TRO review takes place. To achieve full visibility display at that junction would require the removal of 2 residence parking bays. There has been a request for a width restriction to be implemented on High Street, South Street and Baskets Lane, but nothing to restrict parking at the High Street Baskets Lane junction. This can be added for consideration during the next review of District 6. It may be necessary to remove 1 residence parking bay to allow for the passage of larger vehicles. This will be confirmed by undertaking a swept path analysis if this is taken. The latest casualty data for all the sites was reviewed to respond to this question, and no injury collisions have been recorded in these locations for the past 5 years. Question 2. This is from Councillor Stephen Rushbrook from Newport and Carisbrooke Community Council to the chair. We know that Elm Grove, Newport, is a very narrow street, and since becoming a cul-de-sac where the barrier was installed, the residents and emergency services are reliant at the turning bay at the 9 acres end to turn their vehicles round. The area at the end is painted with double yellow lines to try and prevent parking here. It has been pointed out that on match and practice days, the turning bay gets filled with people who are attending, playing football and parking on the double yellow lines. This makes it hard or impossible for residents to turn their vehicles. Parking services have responded by saying the turning bay isn't part of the current TRO, and so the parking regulations, the double yellow lines, cannot be enforced. They indicate they expect that the turning bay in its entirety will eventually be covered by a TRO, but did not specify a time frame, which does nothing to remedy the situation in the meantime. 2 questions here are, will the council action the adding of the entirety of Elm Grove and Newport turning bay to the TRO with some urgency? And will the council arrange for the marking out of a large hash box at the turning point, clearly stating no parking? My response, again, thank you for the office for preparing this. The council will add the entirety of Elm Grove, Newport, turning head to the next parking restrictions TRO that is advertised in Newport. The estimated timescale for this is 6 to 8 months. This will ensure that it's completed in a much quicker timescale than if waited for the next district TRO review for Newport. The Road Traffic Act 1988, Traffic Signs Regulation, General Direction 2016 and Traffic Manual Chapter 5 prescribe the rules of the area of usage of hashed box, and turning heads are not one of them. Hatched yellow boxes are used to prevent motorists from blocking critical junctions, as well as outside of fire stations or ambulance bays to keep exits free. If a hatched box was added, it would not change the type of enforcement that could take place because it's determined by the presence of double yellow lines or other parking restrictions. My 3rd question. This is from Mrs. A. Taylor to myself, the chair. Could the council please provide the written policies, procedures or internal guidance relied upon by highways officers when determining whether an obstruction exists on any public highway under section 130 of the Highways Act 1980 and confirm whether these procedures incorporate the evidential standards, assessment considerations and legal principles established in relevant case law? And thank you again for the preparation of this response. When determining whether any action is required to deal with a potential obstruction under section 130 of the Highways Act, the Isle of Wight Council's highway officers will thoroughly consider each situation on a case-by-case basis. Given the variety of situations and limited number of occurrences where section 130 may be relevant, there is no written policy, procedure or internal guidance within the council. Where potential obstruction which requires action is identified, it is swiftly investigated to determine if there are any immediate safety issues. Where appropriate, advice is sought from the council's legal officers. The council's legal teams have access to extensive case law relating to section 130 and all other relevant powers available to the council as a highway authority. Based on the specific circumstances and the legal team's recommendations and interpretation of all relevant highways case law, highways officers will determine, acting reasonably, what action, if any, is required. In this case, the council has investigated and implemented all reasonable measures for the road in question. The carriageway was measured with a width of 2.8 metres recorded. This was compared with the Manual for Streets 2007, which is the design guide for residential lightly trafficked streets. The Fire and Rescue Service and Waste Collection Service were contacted. They both reported limited but acceptable clearance. The owner of the property with the boundary wall bordering Red Road was issued with a notice to clear their overhanging vegetation, which increased the available width of the carriageway to 3 metres, including a parked vehicle at the side of the road. An available width of 3 metres or less is 3 metres or slightly less is not uncommon in residential areas. Examples of the island include West Street and Cross Street in Ventnor and St Catherine Street in Ventnor. Thank you. I took the liberty of speaking to the member of the public in the gallery, and I do not believe they have a question here to observe. So that's public question time over. It's a typo. Yeah.
Apologies, it was meant to be braiding. I think I might have just typed Ventnor twice. So.
Oh, sorry, I just read it out as was. I didn't know there wasn't a cross street in Ventnor. Got one in Newport. There's one in Rye. I don't know. They're everywhere. Right. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Let's move on to the decisions part of the meeting. So we've got quite a varied varied items this evening. So the first one is the Seaview Lane Nettlestone developer TRO proposal, and that's on page 11 to 48. Did we have someone going to be introducing this, or we're just going?
No, I'm presenting and Stuart is supporting. So. Right, good evening, councillors. So I am presenting the report on the Seaview Lane Nettlestone development related TRO. So the report that you have received provides details of the recommendation for introducing, sorry, I'll just move that a bit closer, new parking restriction, which is detailed on the map in Appendix 1, no waiting at any time at Seaview Lane, Rowantree Drive Junction, proximity in Nettlestone. The recommendation is that the committee approves the proposed restriction that is subject to this report in relation to the Isle of Wight Council Traffic Regulation Order Number 1, 2025 as proposed. So the background is that conditional permission was given in August 2020 to build 17 dwellings, including 6 sheltered flats, and Appendix 2 shows the development master plan. This was subject to a 106 agreement. The traffic regulation order is it's required in order to secure secure junction and pedestrian visibility displays, and to allow private and service vehicles to enter and exit the site with ease. The works associated with the TRO will be implemented in accordance with a scheme that will be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority. So, a new TRO was applied for back in 2022, and I believe this has already come to, would it have been committee at that time? Cabinet at that time. So it came to cabinet at that time. It wasn't approved at that time, hence it coming back here now. The total cost will be covered by the developer. Obviously, the legal case for it is that we are the statutory authority for making new TROs under the Road Traffic Regulation Act, and the purposes of those are to avoid danger to persons or other traffic, to prevent damage, and to facilitate pedestrian access along the road. Working down the report, obviously, the alternative options that you can consider are option 2, not to approve. So you can be minded not to approve the recommendation that we've put forward this evening due to the loss of parking spaces and the long-term guarantees that this will be offset by the additional spaces. However, from a road safety point of view, the road safety and highways engineers in Highland Roads have strongly advised against this option on the grounds of safety, going back to obviously the safe entrance and egress of vehicles into the development and pedestrian access. You can approve this with an amendment, so to reduce the length of the proposed restriction. And again, as per option 2, the highways engineers in Highland Roads have strongly advised against this option on the grounds of safety. So the reasons for recommendations are in order to ensure the convenient and safe movement of traffic, the provision of adequate parking, convenient and safe movement of traffic, including pedestrians, and the provision of adequate parking facilities. The recommendation is to approve. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Do you want to add things, Mr. Chancellor?
Yeah, if I could, Chair, thank you. Just to add that, just in addition, it's not on the same basis, quite the same basis as it was previously presented, because following the resolution to grant consent to revise condition 15, which enabled a car park of 21 parking spaces inside the proposed development to be used by Nettlestone Primary School and the general community, reserve matters planning consent has been granted to the developer by the planning authority, thus mitigating the loss of on-street parking for the local community. This is why the motivation for the developer applied for a TRO again this year. So the rationale behind it coming back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Love and Mr. Chandler. I'll open up to a debate then. Anyone would like to kick us off? Yes. That's all. And then Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chandler, you said the parking area has been increased. How many more vehicles could we get in there now?
I think that rather than the increase of its size, I think it was in regards to the purpose in which it was secured and agreed with the planning committee, for where it was outlined that it would be specifically used by Nettlestone Primary School and the general community.
Right.
And there's a particular reference.
Oh, sorry.
That was some of the concern that was raised previously, and I believe that was amended to address some of those concerns raised.
Okay, so they changed the usage.
Yeah, to ensure that there's a more clear identification of this purpose.
Thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you. I'm the ward councillor for Nettlestone and Seaview. And whilst I recognise the council's responsibility to ensure safe and efficient traffic management, I do not believe this proposal achieves that aim. Instead, it risks reducing safety, damaging community life, and unfairly disadvantaging residents. It also contradicts existing council policy that prevents implementation of TROs simply to enable development to take place. There are strong grounds under this policy to refuse and reject such requests for TRO implementation. The car parking spaces, which are supposed to mitigate the loss of parking, doesn't do any such thing, and it cannot guarantee that it will be there in perpetuity. So it's just not an answer. I suggest it needs to be revisited. We have major problems on the corner by the green and the school. And with a bit of work between highways and the parish, I'm sure we could kill two birds with one stone. But what's proposed here really isn't the answer.
For response there, Councillor Adams, to that.
Of course, happy to discuss the matter further, but obviously decision on the outcome of this is based upon the proposal and the condition that was set by planning committee, and again, the conditions set against that development in particular. So therefore, if we were looking to amend that further, we would need to have a discussion both with the developer as well as the parish council and the highways colleagues to fully understand what could be done within that area before proceeding. And again, it would require, if there's a change to the proposals on the planning on the developer, they would need to take that back to planning for consideration. And obviously, I'm not be able to speak for that side as to what their decision would be on those mitigations as well. Likewise, we'd need to get the views of development control just to make sure that they would be satisfied by whatever proposal is then drawn up on the back of this. The concern that I must raise is that there may be legal implications by not going through the approval process this time. It's set out within the risks of the document anyway, just to know that we've been through the process previously. They've taken steps to amend some of the concerns raised at the time, but there is now the issue between obviously the decision of the planning committee and approval of the development and that of the potential difference between this committee making decision as well. So that may raise it. And you quite rightly point out that we've got to consider this in regards to our TRO policy as well. So therefore, again, that might come into question on any further legal considerations.
Got Councillor Jarman next.
Thank you, Chair. My concern is here I have a very strong feeling of deja vu in that we've been around this particular loop a number of times. The cause is not an individual application. The cause here is that the planning committee are approving with a condition which is contrary to the Isle of Wight Council's policy. And that needs to be reflected back, I believe, to the planning committee and not something we can address today. But in regards of this I will call it a deja vu application. Councillor Adams points out some very valid points. And in section 13, we can note that the previous rejection was on the basis of lack of current safety issues. And we know here from the police commentary in this document that removing those parking places is likely to increase the average speeds along the road and therefore increase the danger. And we know that there has been at least one accident with a car going through a wall on that road. So that issue, which was raised before, quite rightly as the grounds for refusing this, remains valid. The second one is the reduction of on-street parking. And we know that this will make the proposal here will not change that original objection. We will still be removing 15 car parking spaces, much needed by the residents. We can see if I go to section 49, the valid reasons which are given by the parish council, again, objecting on the previous grounds. Nothing material has changed. The police objection at section 50, the loss of on-street parking again at section 51. So I think here we're dealing with something which is very much deja vu. There is no material change from what has been dealt with previously and which was rejected by Cabinet. Nothing that would materially affect the loss of those parking spaces on the road, nothing that would materially mitigate against the increased dangers that the increased speed itself would cause. So I suggest we, I'd like to propose straight away, I think, Chair, if you're happy to do this, that we go to the vote on this, and I propose that we reject this application based on option 2, which is section 41 in the document. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor John, I did have actually Councillor Blake had already indicated to speak. Would that be all right? And I don't have a proposer and seconder yet. I'll just check with my officer.
Sorry, Chair, thank you for that interruption, but I've made the proposal. I'll look for a seconder on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair, can I make a comment after we voted?
Of course. I'm going to bring Councillor Blake in then.
Chair, I don't want to hold things up. All I was going to say was that the traffic, the parking that's there currently is acting as a traffic calming measure. And I've got a situation in my ward where the opposite has happened, and I could quite do with some parking spaces on a similar road to slow down the traffic, because the ongoing situations created that incidents do happen, but because it's a relatively quiet road, they don't trigger the KPIs to start putting things like a traffic calming measures back in. So I entirely agree with the police's outlook that if you were to remove those parking spaces, it does create more issues that we probably then won't have the metrics to then correct. So for that reason, I'll be voting against it.
Proposal now from Councillor Jarman, second by Councillor Adams, and that's basically an exact opposite of what's on page 11 for us. So that the committee does not approve the proposed restriction. Is that exactly what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So all those in favour? And that's everybody. Thank you. Councillor Ward, yes, please do go ahead.
Chair, thank you. Quite clearly, this is not an isolated incident because it happens elsewhere. And Mr. Chandler described the process. Thank you for doing that. That's very good. It seems to me, and it seems to us, that actually there's a disconnect between highways and island roads in terms of, how can I put this, local member appreciation of the problem. And I'm just going to propose actually that yourselves and Island Roads actually discuss this together, this procedure, and with alongside the local member if need be, to come to an amicable proposal, really, because sometimes, Island Roads go by the book, quite, rightly. You pass your comment quite rightly, but the two don't necessarily match up. I know in this instance they do, but sometimes they don't, and the local member's left out. So we need a better communication on issues like this, especially as this has already been rejected once. We should have got together and discussed the problems and see how we could have got around them. That's what I'd like to propose, really. That Island Roads and highways, and if the local member, if need be, basically talk together when we have a problem like this.
We can certainly facilitate meetings. Island Roads are always very keen to communicate with board members, to engage with them. I think we do have to bear in mind that they currently hold the risk and the liability for the highway network. So they are coming at it from a perspective of the development, which was given planning permission by the planning committee here, requires the installation of a new junction. It will have X amount of traffic coming out of that junction. And therefore, in order to ensure that you're not creating a safety risk by not having sufficient visibility, this is what you have to do. So I think they would be very happy to have those conversations. But as you say, they do have to stick to,
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Traffic signs, regulations and general directions, their obligations under the Road Safety Act, etc. So it's just understanding that balance.
And Mr. Chandler quite rightly pointed out that this was already subject of a planning application and was passed, or maybe we ought to drag in a planner as well into these discussions when we have this sort of issue. I'm not saying every time, but when we've had one that's already been rejected, then I think we all need to get around the table and try and satisfy everybody. That's it.
Before I move on, I think the leaders indicated you want to say something, did you?
Thank you, Chair. It was a clarification for Councillor Ward, but I think he may have clarified it himself. But in the absence of being absolutely sure, what I believe, and I think this committee believes, is the problem is that there is a disconnect with highways and the planning department, where discussions, and one of my questions, we've done it and we'll move on, was what discussions have been had between the highways Department, not Island Roads, Highways Department and the Planning Department. Because what we have is a planning decision that think it can condition TROs without any discussion with the Highways Department. I believe if that is the case, that there's a failing in the process.
I can't comment on behalf of my colleagues in planning. I can say that from a highways perspective, the team, so the development control function, which is those people that review the planning applications and then put forward the transportation comments for them, that service is part of the unitary charge that we pay to Island Roads. So that is Island Roads. So the team that we have doesn't have the necessary resources to then have a secondary layer of development control. So as Councillor Ward was alluding to, if there is an issue such as in this case where it's now been turned down twice, then yes, we would take that on as a case and make the commitment to have that conversation with the developer, with Island Roads. But as a rule, the conversations between highways and planning aren't related to the planning applications because Island Roads do that function.
Yeah.
The problem is that they're consultees and they respond in a method of consulting. What they don't do is what the Highways Department do and discuss the community issue of a planning application. And we don't do it, it seems to me. And that is why we are seeing from time to time around the island, planning applications being granted, conditioned by the planning department, and in this case, for the Highways Department to implement a TRO without any discussion with the Highways Department, whether they are prepared or can implement the TRO. It's not a criticism of anyone. It's an observation of the system we have that it seems to us there is a shortcoming and a failing on. It's just a point. That's all. Nobody's blaming anyone.
Normally, when we hold a vote, that we move on to the next agenda item. I don't intend for us to go on. I let Councillor Ward request before the vote, so we've done that. Let you in. I will let Mr. Rowan respond. Councillor Jarman, if it's burning, you have to ask it. I will let you, but if you can be absolutely succinct after Mr. Rowan's finished.
I can be very succinct.
Okay,
Chair.
right. Come Mr. Rowan, and then I'll bring you in, Councillor. Then we will move on.
Basically, according to what Councillor Jordan said, really, that the planning system is bound by regulations and by the planning law, and therefore they're responding in the way which they do, which is basically reactive to a planning application. Planning application comes in, they have to treat it in a certain way, and there are certain parameters in which they can behave in that way. And we have looked at that policy in terms of if we are looking at applications, we look at those parking issues. This issue predates that policy, unfortunately, so it falls through the cracks. But we are looking to say if there is a development on the highway that actually causes issues like that, then we need to take that into consideration and try to take that into account.
Point of order, Chair. I'm sorry. The point of order is that this does not predate the policy. I'm absolutely 100% sure that we passed this policy before we made a decision on this issue before. Absolutely 100%.
Just a point of thing, Councillor, that you did before you made the decision by the Cabinet, but you didn't before the decision was taken at the Planning Committee.
My point, we're not talking, but we're going round in circles. That's my point. Your planning department is not talking to the Highways Department.
I think you've made that point well. Thank you for your information on that. Councillor Jarman, you're going to be succinct, aren't you, for us?
My very succinct point is I don't think it's very helpful to deal with things after the fact, that the Highways Authority only become involved in this discussion and us after the planning committee has made a decision. The necessity is that the Highways Authority are proactive and become involved in these matters following council policy in their commentary prior to the planning committee hearing a matter. And if the planning committee was to hear that objection based on council policy from the Highways Authority, I'm sure that will be weighted accordingly. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and I think there will be a way forward, I'm sure, on this issue that we've got here. I look forward to seeing. I think I'll come off planning committee now, but I think planning committee are very aware of that now, aren't they? So it's just really sort of vestige of, like you say, fell between the cracks, like between planning committee and the policy. So I look forward to there being discussions with parish council, local members to find a way forward on this. Yes, councillor, sorry, Mr. Rowland, sorry.
Just a final word. We will go back to planning colleagues and have another conversation about this particular issue, because it's obviously, there's a conflict there. We do need to look at what planning regulation is, but we will take that back.
I appreciate that, and apologies if I've transgressed the rules of debate here, but anyway, let's try and get back on track. So we are now, next one is the concessionary travel scheme. You'll find that on page 49 to 60. And what I'm going to do before I let you, Mr. Chandler, speak about it, I'm actually going to read out the recommendation and look for a seconder, so we can then debate it. That's what I should be doing, isn't it? Yes, ideally. Let's get back to the proper rules here. So the recommendation is on page 50. The committee approves to continue with the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme, ENCTS, so the very catchy title, on the direct reimbursement principles. B, to maintain the existing discretionary enhancements as detailed in this report for the next financial year 26-27. C, a review of the enhanced local scheme takes place. D, and that delegated authority be given to the Strategic Director of Community Service in consultation with Section 155 Officer to prepare and implement the concessionary fares scheme reimbursement arrangements for 26-27 financial year. Looking for a seconder. I will propose that. Looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Ward. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you very much. Obviously the recommendation is fairly succinct and clear, and what we're trying to do here is the annual process by which we have to decide on the scheme, the shape of the scheme that we take forwards into the next financial year. This starts the formal process as per the Department for Transport guidance for concessionary travel, where we will publish a notice on or after the 1st of December and open the negotiations with our local commercial bus operators on what that reimbursement looks like based upon the scope of our scheme. This is going to be taken into account the latest guidance that has been published by Department for Transport, which usually comes in just in advance, and it has just come in just in advance of this. One point of note is that with the increase of pensionable age, so does the age range in which you become entitled for the English National Concessionary Scheme as well. So that will be 67 as of April. And so therefore, we may see some changes as a result of that. But obviously, all it does is delay the profile by a year. Effectively, this sets out our discretionary elements, which we have followed for quite a number of years now, but it's ahead of the transfer of the concessionary travel and the strategic bus service responsibilities to the Hampshire and Solent Mayoral Combined Authority next year. We would like to commence with a review of those discretionary elements so that we can fully understand their implications, both financially and also whether they truly benefit and the right fit for what's necessary out there, so that going forwards, when the Mayor and the Mayor Combined Authority makes a decision on concession travel, they can have an informed position on what goes forward. So this will hold that arrangement till then and also give them insight into that. One point that I should raise under recommendation D is that should the following negotiations with the commercial bus operator, it becomes evident that this will either create a pressure in the budget into the next financial year, then we will need to take this back to the Performance, Finance and Resources Committee, Policy, Finance and Resources Committee, because if it is an additional cost, that will need to be considered by that committee as well. So whilst the authority will be given to the Strategic Director of Community Services in consultation with Section 151 Officer, there is still that potential that if it does look like it is going to be a budget pressure for the next financial year, we will still have to take it through. The implications on this, based upon carrying forwards of recommendations, are relatively low, but It is understanding that is a high level of spend in relation to concessionary travel. That again reflects the demographics of the island and is, you know, everyone understands the aging population and the pressure is likely to continue going forwards. And at this time, there is no indication that the national scheme is likely to change. So it's our local concessions and the national scheme. So we're likely to see these sort of pressures and this sort of requests going forwards into future years as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shires. I think it's very, very wise that you do, you know, review it as we go along. In the past, we've had to change the scheme, haven't we? For budgetary pressures, we start off very generous. We seem to sort of drawn back over the years as the austerities hit us. So, well, go open up to the floor, Councillor Jarman.
Yeah, I should make a declaration of interest. I'm sure I'm probably the only one here who's in possession of a concessionary pass. So I'll make a declaration that I do have a concessionary pass and I therefore have an interest in this matter. But I have two questions. One is very specific and one is perhaps more general. The specific one is that in April, when it changes to 67, there will be a number of people who are 66 at current and have a concessionary pass and will not achieve their 67th birthday until after April. Will the cards be removed from them or will they be grandfathered in as accepted?
Those who have become eligible prior to the date cutoff, they will retain their bus passes. However, those who are 67 and will have to wait 365 days before they become eligible, unfortunately, they won't be passported forwards. They will have to wait their time. It's given the financial pressure and the financial impact this has on the council. We're not really a position to be able to offer that concession to extend it. It is something that's regarded in the guidance, but it's down to local authorities to make that decision. But we should do that with the full understanding the financial implications that doing so would have. And so therefore, when these do change, unfortunately, are those that do miss out.
Thank you. Well, I'm very glad to hear you're not going to be taking my card away. I happen to fall into that little funny gap. So the second question is that the concessionary travel plans that we have, when they go to the mayoral body, which is noted at item 3 on here, is that the whole sweep of concessionary passes or is it simply bus concessionary passes? And I raise that specifically because of the children, for example, who have concessionary travel tickets, which are valid on both buses and trains, and indeed with the Gosport Ferry on the ferry as well. So there's a number of integrated concessionary arrangements which are in place. And I understand on the island that's only used for buses, but in a greater authority, that would no longer be the case.
Yeah, any of the decision we've got in front of us and the concessions the Isle of Wight Council offer only relate at this point in time to local bus services. Those products which are available on cross-Solent ferry services and on rail services and others are generally commercial offers made by them themselves. Therefore, it's not something that will be affected by decisions here or even the mayoral combined authority, unless those local authorities on the respective areas previously have made a decision to offer a concession which they then subsidise. However, my understanding is that there isn't any of those. Certainly Hampshire have moved to the statutory minimum when it comes to the English National Concessionary Travel Scheme, is my understanding. So therefore, any services in and around Hampshire are unlikely to be affected by the combined authority, as they won't be moving, you know, there is no additional concession for them to consider. So those offers are likely to be commercial in nature, therefore down to the operators to make a decision on that.
I've got Councillor, well, you're making a face, Councillor Jarman.
Sorry about that. I don't want the school children in particular who are on the island to be disadvantaged in any way, where they're going over to Portsmouth or over to Brockenhurst, you know, for school or college. And so where there are concessionary travel on the trains which are granted in Hampshire, for example, if I go along the line from Portsmouth to Brighton in the morning or the evening, an enormous number of children are getting on with concessionary passes. And if they can have them under a mayoral combined authority, I think we should press for them for the island children as well. So I'll leave that as a thought. I'm not expecting an answer from you now, but I do think that we should have every concession which is available to anyone within a greater administration. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree that, you know, there will have to become a point where the concessionary offer, and this is the recommendation when forming a combined authority, is that the long-term view is to have a single concession or a single range of concessions for the combined area. So therefore, all of those concessions that are offered by the individual unitary authorities, as will be, or, you know, how the contingent authorities are structured under the combined authorities will look, they will then be considered by the mayoral combined authority as to what they can do, because the costs of concessionary travel retained with the unitary authorities. There is no funding for those concessions directed to the mayoral combined authority, so therefore the unitaries will still pay that back. So if there's an enhancement to the concessions offered, that will come at a cost to the unitary authority sat within the combined area. But obviously there'll be a sort of movement of money from the mayoral combined authority to the unitaries, then potentially it goes back to cover off the cost of concessionary travel. But at this point in time, I'm not aware of any home to school related concessionary travel that's offered by others outside of what's already being offered by the commercial operators. So would be outside of the scope of concessionary travel for this purpose anyway.
Thank you. I'm going to move on now. Councillor Fuller, and then I've got Councillor Blake.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. First question is, to what extent, in relation to the formula, does the island lose out? I know in the past it's been highlighted that because we have so many people coming on holiday to the island, and they may come from Wolverhampton and they may travel on the buses, it costs the island much more money to be able to support the concessionary fare scheme. What I'd like to do is get some kind of handle on that impact that it has on the Isle of Wight. Because again, if you are funding a lot of people coming on holiday here from the mainland, it does have an adverse impact. And I was wondering in pounds, shillings and pence, how much that impact is upon the island. I've got another question afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, can certainly provide that information as best that we can. It's on the basis that obviously all concessionary bus passes are smart card and therefore have the chip in on board, which denotes which authority that they have been issued by. We track that information for non-Isle of Wight Council issued bus passes, and we certainly do see a peak through the summer period, and I'm more than happy to provide that information. But there's general awareness that there is all year round a percentage of the concessionary travels are those using concessionary bus passes issued by authorities that are not the Isle of Wight Council. Some of that obviously might be the case they've not renewed their bus pass within that period of time, but the majority, given the shape of the change, is very much visitors to the island as well, utilising their concessions.
Thank you. Just a supplementary to that, I'm wondering whether there is the opportunity for the Isle of Wight Council to claw back those extra costs, because it doesn't seem very fair that taxpayers on the island are helping to subsidise people coming here on holiday from mainland authorities that are having their concessionary fares funded for them by those authorities.
Unfortunately, the current English national concessionary model doesn't allow for that. So that is where it's an English concessionary model, not just individual individual authority bound areas. Therefore, the agreement was that it enables travel between those areas with no recompense back to the constituent authorities of their originator, should I say. But it is something that we have fed back before, and there is, I believe, certainly was at the commencement of the scheme recognition of this when it comes to the funding formula, but it goes into the revenue support grant for the individual authority. So therefore we don't generally see the breakdown as to how that's reflected, but we can certainly see it the other side where we know the percentages and the potential cost of non-Isle of Wight Council issued concessionary bus passes being used on the island. So I'm more than happy to present that and send that to the chair for distribution amongst the.
Yeah, just to further comment on that. I mean, it's good that it's acknowledged in the grant formula, but however, we are known as a good place to go have sustainable travel. destination. And I think having less cars coming over on the island, using our roads, and people choosing to use our excellent bus service, I think is something to be applauded as well. So I hear completely what you're saying, but stepping back and looking at the bigger picture as well, I think that is something that we are encouraging and government encourages. So it's good that we picked up elsewhere, but there's not obviously exchange. I wouldn't want to not invite people to come and have a great car-free holiday on the Isle of Wight.
No, I get that, and I support that. However, I think it is something that we share with other coastal communities across the country, and coastal communities usually cost a lot more money than those areas that don't, because of the extra needs that we have supporting our population, and I think that's something that should be borne in mind. The other question I wanted to ask, and I'm really pleased that at the moment that no consideration is being given to this, is about the support that we give to disabled people on our buses. You know, the Isle of Wight is getting more and more unique in the fact that we allow people with the mobility impairment to travel before 9:30 in the morning, and we are slightly different from the mainland. And one of the things a lot of people say to me is, isn't it great that we can go to work? We were, you know, when you have mobility issues, and I think that is something that we fully recognise as a council, and long may that continue, because it is very, very important. And I know every year we look at the budget and we think, well, we can save ourselves a little bit of money by supporting by not supporting those residents with mobility needs, but at the end of the day, I think we're richer for it, and I think that those people that are going to work and are being encouraged to go to work can to make use of those concessionary fare schemes. So I think that's really good. So, but what I want is reassurance that that may not that is unlikely to change.
Obviously, what the intention is under one of the recommendations is to undertake a review, so we have a better informed on any decisions in relation to that going forwards, whether it be by the Isle of Wight Council or the mayoral combined authority going forwards, as to what the implications are of maintaining or removing such discretionary elements of the concession. So that's where we want to arrive at, is an informed position, then we can make decisions going forwards.
Thank you. And I've got Councillor Blake now.
Thank you, Chair. I was a little bit worried of his previous answer that Councillor Fuller was advocating for the new tourist tax that the government are pushing for, which I'll be strongly against, by the way, if I want to put that on record. Secondly, my question, I'd be remiss of me to not mention that particularly some people known to me would have a go at me if I didn't mention that there are, particularly on our rural routes, oddities with the timetable. I mean, obviously you can't get on the bus until a certain time with the concessionary, and a lot of the rural routes link into Newport to then going on to somewhere else, so that they are severely limited by their mobility because they can't get a bus until after the designated time. And of course, the rural routes tend to be not once every half hour or every 5 minutes, or whatever the number one is. They tend to be every couple of hours, particularly in the winter. And they're severely limited and by what they can do in a day by the time they have to start. So I just wanted to ask officers just to sort of, when they talk to Southern Vectis, just see if they can nullify as many of these black spots that are created around our island, particularly in our rural areas, that, as I say, does particularly affect our elderly residents. And if we're going to be looking at things like adult social care bills to move on, things like that really do factor into one's sustainability in their own home.
No, thank you, Councillor Blake. And yeah, I completely agree. Conversation with the operators is always very useful, and filling in any of those gaps. The only gap that I'm aware of at this point in time in relation that potentially prohibits early travel is on the Service 6, our Fentanyl via Chow, Whitwell area. It's something that we have considered before, and it might be something that we can certainly look to do within the bus settlement funding that we've got available to us, subject to the amount of funding that's likely to cost, because obviously if we're accepting them earlier, it does mean there's potentially more people travelling concessionary. I don't want to add on to the general budget we've got for concessionary travel any additional pressure or any unnecessary additional pressure at this point in time, but if we've got a different funding route, then certainly it's something we can look at supporting. I just need to make sure that it's compliant with the grant conditions.
Thank you, sure. I mean, number 6 is one of the ones that I say is the one that is affected that people I'm dealing with. I don't think you would see an increase in the demand. It's more just the timing of when it is, and I think that's quite key in that. And I don't think you have extra old people trying to get on the bus. They just get on the one slightly earlier than the one they're having to get onto.
No, thank you very much. Yeah.
And I think it's an important point to raise because, you know, if you are an isolated community and it's very difficult to get out and have to, you know, meet people, go to the library or whatever you want to do, it's very restricting and that can actually add to your own personal isolation, which we know is bad for your health and mental health. So I think that's a good point to raise, and thank you. It's good to know it's only actually on one route as well, so it might be something we can achieve. I haven't got any more hands up, so I've got a proposal and I've got a seconder. So I'm not going to read it out again. It's on your papers on page 11 if you want to look at it. On page 50, sorry. So all those in favour? Thank you. That's everybody. Oh, sorry, chatting away. Moving on. Apologies. Anyway, we're moving on now. Before I bring in Mr. Matthews to introduce it, I will just go to recommendation, which on page 62, that the committee approves the growth and prosperity strategy attached to Appendix 1. That the committee delegates the strategic director of community services to make any required and minor amendments, and to oversee design and publication of the Isle of Wight Economic Prosperity Strategy as a public-facing document. That the Council's Economic Development Team works with key partners to develop a strategy action plan for review and approval by the committee in early 2026. So when we say early, we've got a meeting in January, we've got a meeting in March. So March, okay. Okay. So that's helpful. So is everyone clear on that? So I'll propose that. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Ward, okay. Okay. Oh, Councillor Stewart, you would like to? Yes, Councillor Stewart. Okay, there we go. Right. So over to you, Mr. Matthews, to introduce this very comprehensive document.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the strategy sets out a shared vision for a flourishing and fair and green island economy. It's identifying our local priorities while aligning to the emerging Hampshire Solent economic and regeneration agenda. The objective really of the document was to build a global competitive and sustainable economy based on our island assets, which we have many. It's to champion our island regionally, nationally and internationally as a key place of work. Is to deliver local and regional priorities through innovation and partnership and collaboration, to strengthen our already good record of inward investment, but to ensure equity across the growth opportunities that the island currently faces and will face in the future. And you'll see in the document that it's underpinned really through the support of young people to make sure that young people stay on the island, grow on the island with improved skills, careers, opportunities, so that we keep our assets on the islands where we can, but also support them with their opportunities on the mainland as well. The commission was through a company called Stantec, who created the Solent Growth and Prosperity Fund, and they also did Southampton's. Very experienced company, done them around the country. They set out a consultation process, which was overseen by our Economic Development Board, and involved stakeholder themed meetings, one-to-ones, meeting with young people, a range of partners to try and get their views. We also gave them current policies around the council, because this all ties in together with education, anti-poverty, etc., transport. And they moved and identified a number of key island priorities, which you'll see in the report. Again, those priorities underpinned by focusing on young people, collaboration, because we need to work better with organisations both on and off the island, and to develop partners on actually delivering some of our priorities. That will be locally based a lot of the time, but also in many of the projects now, we're working in partnership with mainland authorities and mainland partners to ensure the island gets good value from the resources that are available to us, and we do that in partnership. You will see from the priorities that were identified through the consultation that we focus on business innovation, digital and green technologies, visitor economy, sport and leisure, culture and the creatives, environmental enterprise and rural economy, connected communities and transport infrastructure, thriving places in our care economy, education and skills are the key ones that have been identified. The Isle of Wight stats are not great on economic development. If you look at the moment, we are below national average on employment rates. Our unemployment rates are higher than our southeast competitors nationally, and our economic inactivity group is larger than southeast and national as well. So we've got some work to do. We have started, we're through the Economic Development Board, and you'll see at the back of the report some of the initiatives that we've already started working on: careers development, skills, identifying skills opportunity. We've secured a DWP Connect to Work, which is a fund to get those inactive back into work. So we've already started to put some action on the ground, and we will come back to members in March with a detailed action plan with some of those actions already in the report, but we will probably enhance it a little further. The document, as it's drafted at the moment, is already being used with our Hampshire and Solent partners to look to create a wider mayoral authority economic plan. So it's important that we get our island's voice in that plan and our island's priorities heard in that plan, so that if there are any further resources that are available to us, we can clearly identify where our priorities are and there is an evidence base for that. So that's a summary of the report, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yeah, that's great. I just wonder if you could just, you touched on some of the work we're doing already. Would you be able to touch on the success of what's happening in the hub in Pyle Street as just one, because that was work with DWPs. I think that the figures on that are actually quite impressive.
Absolutely. Yes, Chair. The Youth Hub is a DWP funded, so that's looking to get young people that are inactive and into work. It's delivered through our partner, the Youth Trust, and they've exceeded all expectations last year and this year in terms of getting young people through the door to give them a career pathway and advice into work. Also, I'm really pleased to tell members that the Connect to Work contract that was recently procured is through a company called Palladium, but they are linking in with OSEL and the Youth Trust to make it a very locally delivered scheme. So again, we're trying to build that success, and those that are doing really well do more of it.
It's just good to know that some of the details, isn't it? You know, how so it's a small scheme is actually having a massive impact. It's that holistic view of getting young people back into work and looking at their lives, as well as just, you know, them turning up for a job interview. I know that our members are really interested in this report, and will have a lot to say. So who's going to go first? Yeah, Councillor Blake, there we go, out of the blocks.
Sure, thank you. I just want to pick up initially on that youth hub point. I mean, I visited recently, and one thing, I mean, they are doing an amazing job there. One thing they did say though is that they are always wary of their funding deal being 1 year, and they would request that it was longer. So if we can build that into our dealings moving forward. But in terms of this economic strategy, it's a good start, I think, is the best way of saying it. It's a good start. However, you know, we are devoid in the area of, as has been pointed out, in economic development. And if we are going to survive, not only as a council, but as an island, we need to really grow our business community on the island. For for want of the council, obviously for business rates. That's going to be our main financial tool. We get ourselves out of the mess that we may or may not find ourselves in. And you know, we've got to be really shouting about what is wonderful on the island. We do have some USPs that I do think we need to go into more detail on, particularly around the maritime industry. And also there's a burgeoning wine industry on the island that I think we need to, we got climate change, you know, the government are cutting down on electric vehicles now even, so it's going to be accelerated. So we're going to have the weather like the south of France on the island more and more often. And, you know, there is actually the wine industry is looking at the island as a place to come into. And I think we need to be singing the praises about that and looking to facilitate things like that. And I say this strategy, the end goal, it's so important. It's just, it is everything. I mean, if we're not leading the way on this, you know, we might as well just give up, you know. So I welcome as well that there's a potential working with Southampton University moving forward on this strategy. I'm aware that the strategy has to be put in pretty soon in terms of we need a strategy to satisfy government in order to not look dysfunctional at least. But you know, I'd be welcoming this document becoming a bit more of a living document, certainly in the short to medium term, because I say it's a good start and we need to get something in. However, a lot more things that could be done.
Do you want to comment directly on that, Mr. Matthews?
Just on the youth trust, we are in negotiations with DWP to get a year extension or more, because they are a beacon of best practice. DWP are recognising it. They're doing more than what they're being funded for. So we're really badgering them hard to give them funding, but over a longer period of time, because they struggle to plan year on year as we do. And I completely agree with the councillor in terms of this is the start. You know, it's around ongoing review, change and challenge, and making sure that we're delivering against our key priorities. And it's not just a document that sits on the shelf. So I completely agree.
I just wonder if you could describe, so we've got the, obviously in the, in our recommendation, it talks there's be some small changes, or edits maybe, as it were, that can be done, and then it's signed off by Mr. Rowland. I was just wondering if any comments come up this evening, whether they could be fed into that. Would that be okay? Yeah. Just I think it might be helpful with some of the comments that may come forward. So I thought you were all itching to go. Oh, here we go. Right, here we go. Right, starting now. Okay. Right. So I got Councillor Beston and then Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm in support of the strategy, without doubt. And as I indicated earlier, I just want to focus in on the visitor economy side of it. I mean, the strategy does present a high level vision for transforming visitor economy. So I do welcome that. I think it's a bit light in places. I think that needs to be built on. From the strategy will come the plan. So I think where I'm getting at is if we look at our current DMO or LVEP, I like to call it a DMO. I mean, Visit Isle of Wight at the moment is in quite a precarious situation. That's one thing. If we fast forward to the end of next year, 26, we're going to be facing a new DBID. Bearing in mind that the last DBID only just scraped through. So, you know, for me as an accommodation provider, that does cause concern. I would want to see built in the plan from this strategy is how we're likely to overcome that. The other thing we're going to see is obviously with the mayoral combined authority being coming in next May, is how tourism is going to be funded, etc. That's another consideration. And of course, the announcement by the Chancellor yesterday on the proposed bed tax as well. So all these things, all these considerations need to be fed in to your plan. from this strategy. So there's just a couple of points I'd like to make.
No, I agree with the councillor. I think this is a live document that will be subject to regional change, national change, and we will have the document will need to flex and bend to make sure that our local priorities are delivered through that plan. Completely agree. And I've noted sort of the DBID and the future of the Visit Isle of Wight needs to factor into that in some shape or form.
Weston. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Matthews, I've read through this, okay? You must know me by now, I'm not a green person. Every page I read says biosphere, green economy, etc. I just, when are we going to get some real jobs? You know, that's really my question. We need industry, this sort of stuff. The youngsters who go through all these little training courses, but where are they going to work? There's no jobs for them. So they're still going to leave the island. Do we physically go out and look for industries to come here? And I don't mean, you know, eco industries. I'm talking, you know, I keep using the word proper jobs, but you know what I mean, don't you? So that's it.
I can answer that. I mean, you go first, Mr. Massey, and I'll come in on that, Councillor Ward.
Yes, the Economic Development Board received a presentation just last month from Innovate UK around a fund that the island could bid for to create new business around composites and maritime business. So it is around a whole range of flavours. So in the document, in those priorities, yes, there's green technology which is in there, but there are lots of other things that the island needs to do as well.
I noticed you talking there about technology, you know, IT and what have you, and I think that's really good because that certainly is the future and it suits our island as well. You know, you haven't got to travel across the Solent every day and things like that. So that's really good stuff. I'm pleased to hear that. You know, I talk to tradesmen and what have you, and they can't get apprentices. You know, we need builders, we need electricians, we need all these trades. And I suppose the technology is churning them out. But perhaps we need to do it at a greater pace. I don't know. That's go on then.
Yeah, I'll come in now. Obviously, I do sit on the Economic Development Board, but previously my cabinet role doing Regen and ECDev. And you may have forgotten about the film studio. Now that is got planning permission. That's got the planning permission, and that is an industry that's coming to the island. And it's also looking. The ambition there is to become the world's first off-grid film studio, which will be a massive boon massive boon to the industry, but also massive boon to the island. But I think we had our eyes open very recently, Councillor Jordan. We went and visited a studio and looking at the amount of trades you're talking about. So it's when you think of film studio, you think of the directors and the top above the line jobs, the glamour ones. But actually, there's lots of entry level jobs that we have. So with the amount of chippies, there was sparks there was scaffolders, there was some real what you would call real jobs there. And we've been working very closely with the Isle of Wight College and HTP apprentices and also at CCAM, because there's all the set designing. A lot of that can be done with the technology they have at CCAM now. So we've been working on that I've been working on that for since 2022, so 3 years on now. And just this afternoon, the educational partnership met online, and we've got Isle of Wight Council there. Mr. Matthews was there. This is a massive thing. It is actually bringing industry to the island. So not only do you get the jobs when the productions are here, you're also getting the add-ons. So you're getting the hospitality, you're getting the restaurants being filled, you're getting people wanting to move to the island, you're getting the set jetting, which is massive, the tourism. So there's probably not going to be one part of the island that's not going to be affected positively from the film studio when it opens. So we are looking, I believe they are looking at opening next year, just getting through the pre-planning commencement. I think it's just got one to go. So don't forget, I know we've been talking about it for a while now, but please don't forget about that, because that is an industry and that is for everybody. and even someone who's never had a job before, they could apply and they could be a runner. And if they love that industry, they will thrive in it. That's all I've learned. I don't know if you want to bring anything else, Councillor Jordan, because you came, we had the trip, didn't we, to see it all? I don't think it was. I think it was just a real eye opener, wasn't it?
I did, Charles. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Having never been to a film show, I was astounded by, as you say, we walked on the sets, saw the sets, and it's all obvious stuff. But then outside of that, this is a whole. It reminds me of a circus coming to town and just taking over a whole space. So the kind of, I mean, there was a timber merchant. So the timber merchant was in the studio area, electricians,
Yes, that's what we do for the last 3 years, Councillor. Hear it from me though, yeah.
and we saw B2 with all the flashbangs going off as well. And we walked along, sorry, just to go up, we walked along the set of Call the Midwife that had been built outside, been filmed there for 6 years. Fantastic.
Sorry, I don't usually comment, I'll answer questions, but just because I've got knowledge on that one, I thought I would. So I've got in the wings, I've got stage left Councillor Stewart and then stage right Councillor Jarman.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Okay, well, first of all, there's no doubt we have to support this. You know, we have to have a strategy, we have to have everything in place. However, in spite of the sort of very many very good things that are happening, an enormous amount of very good work, I think that we're underplaying the issues that we face. You know, if we look at the sort of physical separation between us and the mainland, we are, notwithstanding this somewhat odd comparison with Portsea, we are physically isolated, and the ferries probably reduce our GDP by something like 25%. Had some look at that over a period of time. And of course, we also need to recognise, we talk about young people, but 40+% of our young people leave the island, and very few of them come back very quickly. So we have to recognise what we have as opposed to what we would like to have. And one of my slight concerns, no, not concerns, that's wrong, but one of the things that we should look forward to is how do we actually upskill what we have on the island, the people that are here, the older people, middle-aged people, people even up to my advanced age. Because a lot of those people have something to offer, and we need to make sure that we get them reskilled, retrained, and involved in industry as far as possible. We need to recognise that if we're looking at inward investment, then you need to be very clear-headed. What are our USPs? And we do have a number of those, but they seem to be slightly bitty at times. So we don't have a sort of overall appearance of why would a company come to the island? The film studio is a brilliant example of something coming over here because it does recognise the opportunities here. And I think it's, and I know Councillor Jones-Evans has been doing a lot of work on this, but I've spoken to them and spoken to other people in this area, and it does offer some massive opportunities. So there are really positive things. But we're in a global competition for inward investment, and it's trying to make sure that we actually can get through to the people who will invest. I think to some extent what we're seeing is unrealised potential, and there are big hurdles in the way. The first one is obviously the skills issues. We need apprenticeships, which we already have, but we need more. Further education we've been talking about it for a long time, but we need to try and accelerate that. So we need to try and reach out to not just the local universities. You mentioned Innovate UK, who I know quite well from days of old, and you look at what they want and what we can offer as an island, and to some extent it's limited. We mentioned composites. One of the reasons why Vestas stayed here is because they were linked to the new, as then the composite centre up in Bristol. You know, we need to try and get anything that we can of that area onto the island. There has been some proposals around the sort of the environmental economy, and there are jobs there, and therefore, by definition, they really are real jobs. And it's a question of how do we integrate those things and listen to the other opportunities that have been provided by people like, and I will mention the name Ian Boyd over at Horticology, who's led on a number of other things, including the LNRS, the Local Nature Recovery Scheme. We also need to look at how we can actually get some decent funding, because, and Councillor Bake made the very clear point, some of these really wonderful things that we do on the island do need continuing funding, and the government we need to make sure that the government, and now it's coming down, the mayor, are aware of the struggles that we will face here, and the demographic issues that we face, the skills issues that we face at the moment. To some extent, because of where we are, as it were, the only way is up. So we can change our economic outcome perhaps a bit more easily. And then obviously, as it comes back down to transport, and I still come back down to ferries, until they are improved. And I'm really, really pleased that we have the MPs fully going for it from their different directions. So I think we may have some opportunities there. And then you cut back down to what we have is the plan feels very aspirational, which is that's where we start from. But I think we also need to look more closely at how we can actually deliver, and we need to start putting in delivery timetables, proposals, perhaps on a biannual basis, regular reviews by obviously the officers who actually do all the work, of which we are very, very grateful. And I fully understand the issue, the problems of limited facilities, limited resources, and limited time. We cannot get away from that, which is why the mayoral authority may give us access to those things. And we have to recognise we could be in a very good solent economy with Southampton and Portsmouth and others, but at the moment it's disjointed. So perhaps we could look at trying to sort of really building up a sort of dedicated unit within the council to try and deliver on what is really a very aspirational plan. I've probably said quite enough, so I will pass over to my colleagues.
You didn't want a response then, Councillor Stewart, just for noting what you said, yeah?
No, I think it would be very, very unfair to expect anybody to come back on all of the things that I've just mentioned.
Thank you. As we know, we'll be coming back to, not the report, but the actions will be coming back to us in March. Yeah. Councillor Jarman.
I don't think anybody's got any doubt that the economic future of the island is esoteric to many of the discussions that we have. It represents our failure to deliver it would be an existential threat to our future viability as an island. That's my belief. We have a choice. We can either build the economy on the island, or we can continue to spiral into becoming a retirement dormitory for the rest of England or the UK, perhaps Europe, I don't know, but that's not the direction I want to see the island going in. I want to maintain its viability in many ways. So in that regard, I feel much more at home with the remarks of Councillor Stewart and Councillor Ward in this regard. I'm not too sure what real jobs actually means, but I know what it means, if you get me. And we have the phrase in paragraph 11, which is economic growth. And that's what the target is here. How do we generate economic growth on the island? And when I look at the 200 pages that have very kindly been produced for us, I find it, I understand the remarks earlier with some concerns expressed and, a good start. I probably would err on the other side of the line. I find it actually quite weak. And it's weak because it doesn't address how we deliver that economic growth. If we look at tourism, we've heard of the concerns about tourism, and I think that's very important. In the past, we had a much more vibrant tourist economy here for a whole different set of reasons. It was a different time. Now, what I see is our on-island tourist numbers going down. I see very expensive transport to the island, very expensive B&Bs and places to stay, and very expensive resorts for people and families in particular to attend. Now, that doesn't help being a cornerstone in any way to generate economic growth. If I look at our agriculture, what I see is us covering up agriculture with buildings and roads and lots of nice shiny things that generate electricity. And I see those deep-seated problems with our agriculture on the island in terms of moving feed and fertilizer on and off, moving animals on and off, not having an abattoir. None of those are likely to be addressed, as far as I can see, by this strategy. The idea of using IT is delightful. It really is. If I look at the American Stock Exchange now, okay, it's a bit of a bubble, but 50% of the value of that exchange is driven by AI and high tech. 50%. Now, we all hope that bubble doesn't burst because we've all got pensions, but on the other hand, that reliance on that requires a skill set of people. And what we've got on the island at the moment is 30% of us on the island being economically inactive, and a fifth of the population having no qualifications whatsoever. Now, that's not a great place to start if you want to leverage that growth in AI and high-tech industries. So my view is that you cannot have an economic successful strategy unless you tackle the baseline problems that we have in terms of education. If we deliver people on this island who will be valued because of their skill sets, then businesses will seek to capitalize on those businesses. The college will thrive on continuing their education, and we can leverage those to drive economic enterprise. If we don't cure the problems with education, and we all know where we sit on those leagues at the moment, then unfortunately, the only other option to us is that spiral to become a retirement dormitory. I don't want to see that happen. I don't think most of the people in this room want to see that happen. So driving the educational start for those young people and using that skill set once delivered to leverage into businesses and attract businesses here, that's our viability. So that's my view here, that I find it very weak in all of those aspects. It looks too much at the numbers that are in here, 200 pages, mostly of them. We are all intimately familiar with all the problems that we have and with the numbers. What we're looking for is an economic strategy that delivers success and change, material change to the future of the island. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm guessing that wasn't looking for a response either, Councillor Jarvis, more for noting.
I think I'd like to see it taken account of as this document goes forward. And it needs to have a very different focus in a different direction, not simply to look at our problems and where we were in the past and our numbers. That's not important. The question is, what are the key influence of change that will change from where we are to where we want to be? And that's what the strategy needs to focus on, delivering change. Thank you, Chair.
I think we're getting nods there from Mr. Matthews. Like to come in there?
Yeah, I completely agree with the councillor. I think there's been a lot of talk around economic development and around the numbers and what have you. And I think the change is to actually focus on delivery. So if I use Connect to Work, for example, we know we've got a high percentage of inactive people on the island. The funding that we've got through Portsmouth and the government, we've got 860 people to try to get into the programme and half of those into work. We've got a very specific number to work on to try and get them into work. So that's supporting them up to and into employment and through employment. So that's one example where we're trying to use the problem of inactivity, but the programme is funded and we can report progress to members and say, look, we're on track. We've got people back into work. There'll be case studies around. And I pick up the story earlier around transport. I know that will be an issue because people that are having the most challenges in life will rely on buses to get to work that need to offer a more flexible offer of later start times, later finishes for them to be in work. So it's not just an economic development. It relies on transport. It relies on adult social care. It's a whole global issue for us.
You, I was going to say, and is it, oh, you want to come back?
I did, yeah. So if I look at us having, 75,000 potentially economic active people, and I've got a third of us not economically active, we're not, I understand 850 is a good number to start. It's a nice number. The issue is 20,000 people. Think of that. That's a huge number of economically inactive people who could be economically active. If those 20,000 people were economically active on the island and engaged in work and productive work and well-paid work with skilled jobs, and we didn't have 1 in 5 with no qualifications at all, we would be starting from a very different place. But we're not at that place. So we've got to be very realistic about where we are. And we have to drive the educational side of this system and put every possible resource we can into that, because we cannot leverage or capitalize on that until it gets delivered. So again, I come back to, it's a good start, the document in some ways, but it's very weak in terms of actually marrying up the problems that we have and finding a route forward to success. That's what we need. And we need it urgently.
I think if I might just add in, I mean, you may disagree with me or not, Mr. Matthews, but we've had I think it's fair to say we've had in the past a sort of a very sort of fractured, maybe not joined up as it could be, skills sort of environment on the island and on the mainland, and I think that's one of the strengths that's going to come in with the mayoral authority, because they have skills as one of their tenants. And I think we've been working really well with Solent Growth Partnership. In fact, I'm doing a boot camp at the minute, and there's lots of island businesses on there. Really excellent. I mean, it's excellent free training, about £5,000 worth of training, and it's all for free, and it's really high quality. So I think that the boot camp's been really successful. So I think we're moving to a space where it's a little bit more coherent and joined up. So I think that will make a big difference. But also, I think the numbers there's lots of numbers in here, and I know I've got Councillor Fuller waiting to come in and Councillor Blake want to come back. I also got questions to ask myself. So if anyone's saying move to the vote, I will be speaking before we do that. But it was just about, if we look at the qualifications on page 178 of our papers, page 36 of the document, we're actually, in our region, we're actually bucking the trend for the higher level education, level 4. So it's a quite interesting story, isn't it? So it gives us, it does pinpoint where we can be directing our efforts, maybe, doesn't it? So the numbers are really important. I will be coming back to some other stuff in the paper. I just wanted to point out numbers are important. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, just coming back to the point that you're making, Councillor Jarman. This economic development strategy is a foundation strategy for the activities that we carry out as a council, but also if you're looking at spheres of influence, how we can influence our partners, how we can influence other services within the council. So the education, for example, there are similarities. I know Councillor Ward might wince at this, but the climate and environment strategy is a similar foundation strategy in that it says, as an economic development team, we can do X, but then we influence Y, which is a wider influence, and then we need to talk about how we influence sub-regional and regional and even national policy in order to make that influence on the island. So yes, you could argue that it's weak in certain areas because it's not got the detail in those areas, but it's a foundation strategy to start that conversation with every single partner and every single department we've got within the council to ensure that they meet the outcomes that we require in order to build on the economy.
It's a whole environment into infrastructure, isn't it? Completely. So I've got Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. Yeah, I was looking at the strategy itself, and I think one of the concerns, one of the things that I wanted to have a look was what the strategy says. That's all really good, but on my page 40 or 45 of the strategy, it does mention about, I've got to find it now, just delivering the strategy. Now, the delivery of the strategy is most important. We want to get positive outcomes from it, but how do we get to achieve those positive outcomes? And looking at some of the bullet points within those positive outcomes, it does go around how we can just about do it, but it doesn't actually give me a firm foundation to say, yes, this is the this is how we are, this is the issues, because it does mention the issues in there. It mentions about how we are comparatively to nearby authorities, and it mentions about the delivery of the strategy. But again, I want a little bit more meat on that bone to know how we are going to properly deliver that strategy, because it is an important strategy. A huge amount of work has gone into it, but don't want it to be another strategy that's going to be on a shelf somewhere that just collects dust. I want to make sure that we can have some priorities on how we can move the strategy forward, and that is a concern that we have. I think the worry that we've got is that if you look at the economy on the island, and this is reflecting what Councillor Ward was saying, we are a low-paid economy here, and I think when you have a low-paid economy, one of the impacts of that is that young people don't want to stay here, or a lot of young people don't want to stay here. And I think what we're doing at Kingston is fantastic, because it's actually building some momentum on giving high paid jobs to our young people. And I think that is a step in the right direction. But again, we need to have more of a vision, more of a strategy on how we can actually develop that and move to the future for our children. Because a lot of young people say to me, well, for what reasons do we want to stay here? Why should we be working for the minimum wage on the island like most of the kids do, when on the mainland you can look across that water where you could be earning a lot more doing the same jobs as you're doing on the island? And that is, for me, a real fear, because again, if we want our economy to develop on the island, and it is about economic development, we have to be able to sort of like look at ways of doing that. And I think we need to receive that recognition also from government on moving that forward as well, because I think that's important. It's all of us working together for the economic future of the island. Thank you.
Anything to add to that, the officers?
No, I agree. I think the action plan, needs to pull out the issue from the strategy, be very succinct on what actions we're planning to do over what period, what resources we have, both within the council and externally, so we can show that we're making a difference or we're not. And I think that's the piece of work that I think that the council is asking for, that we're going to try and produce.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I kept my first bit short, so I just wanted to come back on a couple more points because I thought it'd be a bit more of a livelier debate. Anyway, first of all, we've got on the island, as this report amply points out, that we've got a very much a micro and small business led economy, and we did actually make a motion at full council to help support our local businesses, and I don't know actually of any actions we've taken towards that. So I think that we need to reflect on that for a start. One thing, I mean, officers have pointed out, and other members have pointed out as well, that all these strategies we're developing are symbiotic, and you can't have one with the other and things like that. But I think one that really stands out as being linked to the economic strategy on the island is the transport strategy. And you talk about, we want to bring more people to the island. Well, let's look at when we had more people coming to the island in the Victorian era. They didn't get about by a car ferry and roads. They came here on paddle steamers. They came here by trains and things like that. If you're going to move large amounts of people about, you can't rely on our road network to do it. And that, you look at pictures of Ventnor in the, I'm going to use an example as my ward, in the mid 1800s. It is rammed to the gunnels with people, more than there is on Boxing Day swim. You think, well, you think of the logistical movement of getting people there for the Boxing Day swim. It grinds the town to a halt. You can't get in and out on the roads. So to have done that every single day throughout, or every single summer in the Victorian era, shows that it wasn't via roads. And we've got rid of things like our interconnecting paddle steamers. Guessing paddle steamers wouldn't be the choice of method now, but there'd be better ferries. So part of our transport strategy should be far more ambitious and say, why don't we get some more ferry ports in our bays? I mean, you go to Tor Bay, You got Torquay, Paignton and Brixham linked by an interconnectable ferry. That, if you speak to the businesses in Brixham, for example, as I do, they say their biggest up in the day is when that ferry offloads an extra 150 people into their village, and all of a sudden their shops are full and they're happy. You know, on the island, we have got a very well, our economy is very much an interior economy, and we make some money in the summer. We get some tourists over, and then we spend all winter either doing it around ourselves or giving it to Tesco to take it to the mainland, and we lose our money on the island. So we need to bring more ways of getting money to the island at all times. And I think if we, you know, I with young people, every university student wants to get as far away from his parents as possible. So I don't think it's a case of keeping more young people here for the university. I think it's more a case of attracting them back. What have we got to offer someone post-uni? Our schools are some of the worst in the country. We've got nothing for you to do in the winter, you know, things like that. So I think we've got to start building it, and they'll come, putting some stuff in place to attract the right sort of people that we want to the island, because at the moment all we're doing is building retirement homes and wondering why they're getting filled full of retired age people and then bemoaning it because we can't afford to keep them. So I say we just got to be we just got to be better. And I think that's my main point, to be honest.
Any comment back on that? Not really. No. Yeah. Mr.
I'd
Clark.
like to just give reassurance. Obviously, currently working on the Island Transport Plan consultation has now finished as of the end of last week. There is an increasing recognition that economic development and growth for the island is key to what we need to do with transport. So that will be included within the redrafting of that will be coming back to this committee early next year, and obviously thereafter full council. But it is, again, that alignment through devolution where the different areas all come together, economic development, spatial planning and transport, which all needs to work together, will hopefully be, you know, better lines of communication from the very top down, focused on what's right for the island as well. So happy to discuss more when the transport plan is out for consideration at committee. But just to confirm, it is very much central within that document.
That's John, and I'm going to ask some questions myself. Councillor, anyone else who hasn't asked anything wants to speak? Okay, so I'll wait. I'll go last, right? So I've got Councillor Jarman and Councillor Stewart.
I would like to come back on what Mr. Chandler's just said, and I like the words very much. What I think would help is to have definition, and I think that's the thing which most people here have probably been expressing. If I summarize, we just need definition. So one thing we lack on a lot of these documents, when we move from a very high level strategy to a plan, are dates and deliverables. So if I look at the transport plan, I might say, how many additional bus routes are we going to add per year? How many additional miles of railway track are we going to lay a year? How many ferries are we going to operate a year? And when are they going to come on board? Definition in terms of enhancing a transport network isn't about ambition, it's about delivery. And that delivery component is ultimately what always seems to be lacking, a delivery plan, a simple Gantt chart of what gets delivered each month of every year to enhance whatever the infrastructure is we're dealing with it. Now, whether that's talking about miles of railway track, or it's talking about the number of solicitors or plumbers or electricians, it doesn't matter. The plan has to include dates and deliverables. And I think the same is true when I look at this in terms of regeneration. I don't see here what impact we're targeting. For example, are we targeting a 10% growth in GDP per annum? And how are we delivering on it? Unless we have targets, delivering a plan to deliver those targets is extraordinarily difficult. Everybody who's ever been in business knows that a business has a plan and it has targets, and it then discusses how to deliver the targets. And that's what I would really press for here, please. Thank you.
I think we have a target, don't we, Mr. Matthews, for the economically inactive? Is it 2,000 jobs, 2,000 people?
We're targeted with our Solent partners to try and get to the 80% employment, of which we're 72%. So every initiative that we try to bring to the island is to try and creep towards that 80%, as ambitious as that is, but that's what we're trying to do.
Great Britain, the Get Britain Working strategy from the government, which does give targets, doesn't it? So that's helpful.
If I could just come back on that. So if we have 20,000 inactive people on the island who could be actively employed, gainfully employed, what would be the target of those 20,000 that we would make actively employed every year? Are we targeting 5,000 a year? So we remove that in 4 years, or 2,000 a year, that it's going to take us 10 years to change them from being inactive to active? It's that level of definition that we need. And it's that scale of change as well. It's the scale of change that we need to deliver on the island. You know, if we talk about 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 or even 850 with respect, that as an ultimate target doesn't get us to 100% in employment or even close to it. So the deliverables and the dates, please, but be ambitious and make sure that the plans we have to action that delivery are viable for us as an island. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Just to change tack very slightly, one of the things we have an enormous number of figures, but one of the things I've noticed with the island is that I've never actually known what the supply side is. What do we actually do? What's the proportion? I mean, we talk about GDP, but I don't actually have that granularity to know there are certain numbers of companies in manufacturing and they're doing this. You know, where is our expertise? Because we always build on expertise, because that's our USP. And that's the thing that will actually sort of give us an idea of what we can do. Obviously, we're looking forward to sort of changes. We're looking forward to solar panel installers being trained on the island, that sort of thing. But that's one key thing. And the other thing, I think, which I'm not sure about is, and it has been touched on here, is the demand side. What is the sort of intrinsic demand within the island for services and goods and people? Because what we see sometimes as a visitor economy is actually a leisure economy, and the sort of baseline, as it were, would be here during sort of autumn, winter, and that is what we would see anyway. So it's not just, you know, not just visitors, it's what we can actually do ourselves. And then I come on to specific examples. I've got a question coming up, which is being dealt with very well, thank you very much, which is about a small company on the island. But what I'm seeing, talking to them and others, is that the council is still struggling to get a joined up approach to commercial development, toward to how to build companies, because they need the help of planning, highways, waste, you know, all of these different things that 8 different parts of the council need to actually be looking at specific examples. The film studio is an area where, with a lot of attention, they are getting that holistic offer. What I don't see in these smaller companies, especially in sort of rural industry companies, I don't see them understanding what a holistic offer is, and they're certainly not seeing it. And that's something which might be addressed relatively easily by both of the people still left in the council. And there aren't that many, I know.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, that was just for information and not expecting a response back. I think it's all landing. But I just wanted to say a couple of things myself and a couple of questions, observations. I just want to say thank you very much for doing this report. I mean, we started it back in summer of 24, I think, August 24. Yeah, and it was broad interaction with across the island and also other partners. So it has had a deep dive and a really good consultation. when we started it, of course, we didn't know devolution was coming down the road before the white paper came out. So that kind of skewed things somewhat there. But nevertheless, we pivoted and the work carried on. So thank you for staying with it. And thank you for also talking to some other diverse voices and looking at like the 15-year report, for example. And particularly, I'm going to pick up in a minute the work that we've done on Inclusive Ireland. I think that's a real important piece of work we don't really talk about, we've done at the council, and that's part of our UK Shared Prosperity funding, which sadly I don't believe has been replaced yet by the government. And that's basically how we can work with people that struggle to get into work because of maybe a physical disability, for example. But you've only got to look at what we've done, a specific piece of work with these people, and then you look on page 43 of the report, page 42, and you can see you're actually, bucking the trend quite massively on inclusion when we compare to Southampton, Portsmouth, and to the south of England. So economically inactivity for disability. Then we've got people with learning disabilities and employment. For England, it's 4.8%. The South East is 6.6%. We're 8%. That's something to be really proud of, don't you think? But where do we talk about this? Where do we talk about how inclusive we are? We're also quite inclusive as far as equality. I mean, did you pick up the fact that the gap between our female and male workers is only £20? Now, but if you happen to live in the southeast as a region, generally, it's about £150 a week different. That's a huge amount, isn't it? So again, what are we doing on the island that means that this disparity is less? And if we can build on that equality, then I think we will be becoming again a more attractive place to live. Get those. I mean, obviously the pay is still below. Don't get me wrong, but it's that gap and the equality gap. I think it was just on Monday. That was the day each year. It's day in November where women basically average woman stops earning and the males keep earning to the 31st of December. We still do have inequality between male and females of what they earn in this country. And I think that's absolutely shocking. But I'm really pleased to see on the Isle of Wight, it's the gap is much less. So again, looking at, I think really I liked about this was the fact that we can compare ourselves to our neighbours, and they're going to become more colleagues, aren't they, as we move towards devolution. I think it's really good that we understand each other. We understand Portsmouth, we understand Southampton, and we understand ourselves a bit more with all the data. We'll be getting to know Hampshire a lot more as well. And I think it's a two-way street. Is they're learning from us and we can learn from them, so we can all lift up together, but nowhere to focus that attention. But I really quite like the it's probably Appendix 1, the challenges and strengths of the local authority, local authorities. And I think it's actually quite heartening to look at all of the strengths that we have got. Whenever we talk about this, it's always easy to do ourselves down all the time. But we know anyone who's going to get on in life, you've got to be ambitious. You've got to talk yourself up. What are my strengths? When you do a SWOT analysis, all the strength that comes first, that gives you that boost to carry on. So I think a good piece of work. It's good that it's going to be developing and flexing as we move forward. But I think it's a really good start, and we should be proud of what we've done, but also not be blind to where we're falling down, letting our residents down. I think it's a really nice balance here, and I'm really so proud again of the way that we've moved up with our culture as well. The fact we've got more national portfolio organisations, we've got investment from Arts Council now being a priority place. I think that really has a big boost. And when you think about the value nationally of culture, it's actually on a par with the oil industry, but no one ever talks about it on that level. But actually, that's a level. There's another industry for you, Councillor Ward, which we're doing really well at, and bucking the trend there. So I'll leave it at that. It wasn't really that many questions there. More of a comment and reflection, but I think it's intrinsically a good piece of work that we can build off. But I think we know ourselves a bit better and more interesting. I think it has got a good reflection of the island, because I think when we first saw the first iteration, it kind of maybe was like, where is this place? is it the Isle of Wight? But now I think it has got that flavour because you have gone and done more some deep dives with some local partners on to really bring out some of the strengths that we've got. So we have forgotten now. It was quite a while ago, wasn't it? So I think I put the it forward. To the recommendation forward. I think it was Councillor Stewart that was seconded it. Was there anything, did you satisfied about the, oh, hang on, it's the wrong one now. On page. Are you satisfied that we are going to be, there are any required and minor amendments that they will be done by the strategic director? And did you want to put any, did you want to direct any specifics towards?
I did suggest a recommendation, but it was in relation to sort of delivery timetable. I know that that's been expanded by Councillor Jarman. I'm not sure that it would fit into what we've got. I don't think there is time to put that in before it is necessary to send this off, as it were.
Sure.
And so I think that officers have taken an awful lot of interest and time and notes. And I'm sure that they will be looking at this and improving the document and working alongside it to deliver some recommendations that we've suggested today.
Okay, that's fair. I think also just worthwhile pointing out the, I think Mr Matthews has heard that when the strategic action plan comes back for review and approval by us in March, there will be some more, maybe some more targets and dates in there. I think just to satisfy, I think that's what I heard from committee. Councillor Jarman, we're about to go to the vote. We would want to add something else.
Yes, I was wondering whether we might extend the recommendation with a very simple requirement to add at the beginning of it the objectives that the strategy is seeking to deliver. Now, we spoke a great deal about those deliverables today. I'm not expecting the granularity of that to be incorporated in it. As Councillor Stewart's rightly pointed out, it's not there, but there should be actually what the targets of the strategy are. So, for example, I'm sure the group have been working to some targets, whether they've defined them or not. Maybe it's to double GDP in 5 years and quadruple it in 10 years. I don't know. But if we could actually have what are the key targets of the strategy as a simple upfront statement, that would assist greatly. Numerical issues.
That's all been written down by Mr Matthews there, so I think you can be assured of that. So I'm going to move to the vote now, members. So all those in favour, and it's on, as printed on page 62. All those in favour. Right, that's everybody. Thank you very much. Right, we're on to performance management now, which is quarter 2, pages 269 to 302. Always good to see, get these snapshots of our performance. You know, I never miss an opportunity to praise One Leisure, and it's great to see that again. You know, the number of One cards that people are buying and using is increasing. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing turnaround from One Leisure from what they were in the pandemic, having to shut down completely. Staff pivoted and were delivering, you know, they delivered our vaccination services. They were going out and delivering food, medicine to people, working in care. You know, absolutely astonishing the way they well, I know it was across the council, but I actually know that One Leisure got an award from our chief executive after the pandemic had finished. So they've got some amazing skills there, and I think it's the skills they've got and the professionalism that's why people go to One Leisure. Because people get really good care there, good treatment, and help them on their health journeys as well as their social journeys as well. Because everyone, I'm a self-confessed One card holder, but you know, when you go to your fitness class, it's great to see all your friends there and have a chit chat as well. So it works on many levels. So great to see that, and also great to see that our visits across libraries and our museums are up as well. So it's really important that culture has been celebrated. But I'm sure members have got other questions or observations they'd like to make. Yes. Oh yes, sorry. Yes, quite right. So just note. Read out. Yes, the recommendation is that the committee note the operational and financial performance of economy, regeneration, transport and infrastructure services. I'm looking for someone to propose that. Councillor Jarman, and someone to second. Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Right, thank you for reminding me. That was- yes, Councillor Jarman.
So a couple of questions I'd like to raise. One is that for many years, we've had a running issue with setting a capital budget for the council and actually spending it and delivering on it. We all smile at that point, I know, but that's how it is. So if I turn to page 272, where we have the 25-26 capital programme, and I look at some of the actual figures where we are at the moment, the safety schemes, for example, we're at 3.3 and the remaining is 2.9. If I look at the Green Island Link, we had a budget of 2.5 and we've still got 2.4. If I look at Regeneration, it's 9.3 and what have we got remaining? 8.5. It seems we're making very little progress in actually delivering on the capital expenditure programme which was agreed and forecast. And I wondered why that differential was quite so great. Are we bad at planning or delivering or something else?
As far as a green link goes, I mean, I can answer, but I don't know if Mr. Matthews is probably a little bit close to it, but basically it's been the government, I think, is probably the quickest answer to that. Yes, Mr. Rose.
Just on the green link, that there are plans being progressed in terms of the various projects that are related to that are being progressed and will result in capital expenditure. But there are issues such as planning issues, such as developing the schemes themselves and then delivery. I mean, one example is a land ownership discussion that we're having in terms of the route on the west of the island, and that has been dependent on a sale of a piece of land. So, but be rest assured, members, that the work is progressing. It's just that these things take time in terms of development and in terms of the boxes that we have to tick in order to be able to deliver.
I think there's several. I think there's another. Not sure which page it's on. The capital I did mark it early in my papers, but so we're talking about Sandown Town Hall. That's under Regen. That'll be coming to an end. All the spend will be done on that soon. Venture Keys spend will be done on that very soon. We've got an extension for the Green Link now. After much gnashing of teeth, we got there. I think it's 2029 now, is it? Yeah. So that's why the sort of figures look big and maybe haven't been spent yet. But there will be some drawing down on many of these of these projects very soon as they come to an end. But as I say, sometimes it's planning. But I say the Green Link is particularly can be quite challenging. I say it's the West White bit that's causing Newport sorted, Ryde sorted.
Not unfamiliar with the West White problem, Chair. So I'm happy if these sums are going to be spent this financial year, then I've no problem with it at all. It's just that we are getting quite advanced in the financial year, and I was concerned to see so many of them so high.
Did you want to come in, Leader? I saw you indicate, or yes.
We can't guarantee this financial year, but we are progressing them as quickly as possibly can, and we will be delivering as quickly as we can. I mean, what we're quite happy to do, which we've done before, is to share progress on the capital programme and share the progress on individual projects, which is available to councillors to see.
Yeah, and I think when we get to the forward plan, work plan it's called now, I've written on there a Green Link update, and I was hoping for January, but I'll bring that up at the right moment. Leader, did you want to come in on that? I saw you indicate or not? Phil, did you want to come in? No? Oh, you didn't. Okay, sorry. I thought you were indicating earlier. So you remember just thinking of the football starting in half an hour, maybe. I've got Councillor Blake and then Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I just draw attention to the floating bridge numbers, which are brilliant. I think we need to be celebrating how good that vessel is, and actually a secondary point is no other vessel you can buy will beat that. So that's a moot point, I think, probably this committee. Anyway, moving on to the last page, we've got. I've got a black and white copy here, but I'd imagine the colour copy is mainly red. It's the failure of the Highways PFI contract. resulting in significant financial and operational disruption paid. At the end, we've got impact risk of 18, being that the contractual financial cap set aside to deal with geological failures has been reached. And that's for the life of the contract, which we've still got some time to go, ladies and gentlemen. We're about halfway through. Now, I know this is quite pertinent to my ward, but it does actually cover the whole island. If there is a sizable geological failure that takes out a road, the contract has no more capacity to take on any of that cost. So in a week that it's been made abundantly clear to us that we have no reserves, what is the plan should a geological failure threaten our highway integrity? Colin.
So you're right. It has been made clear to us there are no reserves. You're also correct. The geological caps were built into the contract when it was written 15 years ago. So we were in a different time then, and they have been exceeded. We've gone back through those figures to make sure that actually that is correct, that things haven't been placed in the wrong column, etc. But no, they are correct. So now it comes down to building that case. So it's the data, the monitoring equipment that we have across the island. It's the monitoring equipment that we installed in Leeson Road. The council footed the bill for all of the Leeson Road works because the cap was blown by Gillscliff. So that's when it stopped. So we have to build the case to go forward to central government to call on their reserves. Obviously, we talk to the DFT regularly. We have a system that is coming in. We're in the process of procuring it at the moment, which will be a really good investment because it will survey the whole area. It's called an INSAR system, and it will survey the whole area on a daily basis so that we can detect ground movement on a much greater level than just the individual boreholes that are related to specific sites that have previously shown ground movement. Because what we've got to do is collect data of obviously things like the economic development strategy that is coming in, showing that we are committed to growing the island and showing that we have active land movement to build the case for external funding. We wouldn't be able to, if Leeson Road went tomorrow, and that we would not be able to fund putting it back. We would have to go to central government. And it's about having that data to prove that case.
I've had this very conversation, Councillor Blake, with DFT today about additional funding. What they did say is the government are looking at splitting the grant that they provide to local authorities into a structure fund, because they recognise that in a lot of areas there are structural issues related to highways that need capital funding. So what I've agreed with them is that I will resubmit the information that we provided. In fact, some of the information we provided to the Parliamentary Committee, if you recall, that Natasha Dix attended 2 weeks ago, we will resubmit that to the DFT as part of basically warming up the government, warming up DFT to the fact we need more resources, particularly in the Ventnor area and particularly on that maiden road. The other thing we mentioned to DFT, I mentioned to DFT, is that under the mayoral authority, we don't have any major routes on the island. So we'll be making the argument that at least 2 of the main roads on the island should be considered major routes. So therefore, when the mayoral combined authority comes to pass, we should be able to get some more funding if we can get that status on those roads.
We need to get away from just monitoring, and I welcome getting some infrastructure funding, because just watching what's happening isn't good enough. We need to be, where possible, doing as much preventative work as possible, because that is the only prudent way of stopping not only huge financial costs, but actually the human cost. We have been extremely lucky that we haven't lost any lives directly to geological failures, but it's getting more and more likely. And longer that we're not being proactive is only accelerating that. And I think not just in my ward, but I think of the Military Road. I think of the north side of the island. I was about to call it the back of the Wight, but it's the other side. Isn't it? Yeah, I think of flooding in Ryde. I think of all kinds of things that we are quite happy to be monitoring and not actually doing anything about in terms of some preventive measures. And I think we just need to have if a strategy needs to be developed at all, it's going out there and looking for preemptive stuff and things like aquifer management in the Undercliff area, things like raising roads, and actually making some use of the money we've already got. I'm thinking slightly going away from the geological failures, but we have had yet another accident on the Blackwater Road, which we've had some money to improve the safety on, and things like that, which need to be as much preemptive work and proactive work as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. I'm looking at item 15, which is average road condition index on hierarchy 1 roads. Now, I hear it time and time again about how roads seem to be deteriorating. Certainly not the hierarchy 1 roads, but some of the lower hierarchy roads that we have on the island. I was in a situation a couple of years ago where I said to Island Roads, what is the score now on this road that seems to be getting worse and worse? And it had actually improved. Island Roads have said, well, we've gone from sort of like 13.3 to 13.9. And I'm just wondering, how does that, the cynic in me is thinking, is Island Roads here doing averages? Because, roads don't just improve, particularly my Worsley Road in Gurnard, which seems to have more potholes than there seems to be more craters in that road than there seems to be on the Moon. And, I know that there are lots of similar roads that seems to be deteriorating. I just get this sense of feeling that perhaps we are waiting or there is that are waiting for roads to totally fail before any work happens. And I know what I've heard back from Island Roads is that there aren't any proposals to resurface roads across the island, but some of them are absolutely awful. And I can't understand how the scoring actually works. How can you actually improve when over the space of about 6 years? I don't understand the logic, and I did say that to Island Roads, and I didn't really get a response back. They said, well, maybe it was monitored from another area, but the only way I can look at it is if they're looking at the averages and perhaps not testing all the roads that they say that they're testing. Can I have confirmation that they do test every single road on the island every year?
It's a good question, Councillor Fuller. There is an item on the agenda in January to talk about highway performance and to talk about highway condition. So could I suggest that we are going to carry out an informal briefing with the committee in December in the run up to that, and then that will be one of the issues that you can discuss in January and we can discuss in public.
Got a couple of questions of my own, but anyone else wanted to, who hasn't spoken, like to ask anything? Councillor Jarman.
Thank you, Chair. So just following on from Councillor Fuller here, I think when we have that briefing in January, it would be very useful to see the tracking information, particularly where it's GPS located, so that we can actually see the linking of GPS data with the actual monitoring that's done of the roads, so that we know that the actual tracking vehicle that has measured a road has gone along that road for a start, and what the measurements are with the GPS coordinates along there. Presumably there's some database or similar system that records that, is there? So we will be able to look back in time at a particular road, for example, Councillor Fuller's here, and see what the tracking information was in the past and what the tracking information is now, and see if the same route was followed and indeed where those variances came in.
Again, Councillor Chairman, it's a question you need to ask the technical experts in Island Roads, and they'll be available in January to answer those specific questions.
Yes, Councillor Adams.
Just while we're talking about quality, this is just a small thing in relation to everything, but I think it's important. I've noticed when I walk that a lot of the roadworks and works on the pavement as well, they dig the trenches, they reinstate them. There's no capping put on top of them. There's no pitch put on top, sealing the joints between the new and the old. And that frustrates me because I know that the water gets in there this time of year, freezes, starts creating an opening. And it just to me seems such a small job. But have we got anyone out there that checks this? Because I've noticed Southern Water, fair play to them, they seem to be good at it. Wherever Southern Water go, and Scottish and Southern Electric, they put the pitch in, finish the job off. But I notice in particular, white fibre, anything to do with white fibre, they don't like pitch. They don't, I just find it, Colin, it's a small thing. But I think it's a thing that somewhere down the line, it's going to cost money. And have we got anything in place to maintain these standards, that this is the criteria, this is how it should be finished?
Apologies, Councillor Adams. I'm going to. There are things in place, but the actual detail on that is something that it would be best explained by Ellen Rhodes, and that will come in the briefing that we carry out in December. And if necessary, we can talk about that at the public meeting as well. Yeah,
I can give some detail, just not that I'm, but I can. Rather than wait till January. So the way that the reinstatements work is there is a national code called the Specification of Reinstatement of the Highways. So when the utilities apply to work on the roads, they have to have a permit, and that is obviously administered through Island Roads, and that will tell them when, how long, etc. they have occupancy of the road, and it will also give them the reinstatement specifications that they have to adhere to. The districts, once the works are complete, the district stewards will go out and will make those checks. If they aren't up to the standard, then penalty notices are issued under the SROH. So that system is in place. You're right, Southern Water have a lot of faults, but reinstatement actually they are good at. The white fibre, we are aware that their reinstatement quality is very poor. They are on performance improvement notices, and their subcontractor who was doing the works, we have now heard will no longer be carrying out the works because of the quality of the work. So there is likely to be rectifications going on for some of the white fibre works.
Just notice in particular in my ward on Nettlestone Hill, they laid a new road surface not so long ago, and just after it was laid, white fibre dug a trench from the wishing well right up the hill into the village, and there's not one bit of pitch on it. And I just think I've just noticed a few years on, all of a sudden there's sizable openings starting to open up, and they're not going to go away. And I just wondered if there was any sort of quality control or redress on it, because from what I heard was I believe they was under obligation for 2 years, but this is beyond 2 years now. So it just concerns me that cost may fall back to the Isle of Wight Council. And it just seems, with all the work they've done, I think it's a shame, because overall, the dealings I've had with white fibre, they've been pretty good. They're particularly on installations there. I've been onto them a few times to clean up, and they're good. They've always reacted. I've had a response. But I just find that item in particular, I find it frustrating. And somewhere that must bear a cost. It must come into play. But if we're checking it, that's good.
The cost wouldn't be borne by the council directly. So Island Roads hold the liability, the maintenance liability and responsibility at the moment. So if they don't go and carry out the checks and then that road fails, then they would have to make the repairs. So it's in their interest to go out and ensure that that reinstatement has taken place, because we wouldn't pay any extra. That's part of the services that they provide through the unitary charge.
I'm really excited by the prospect of having a briefing with Island Roads in the next couple of months. One of the things I wanted to ask, and I was going to ask it during the members' question time, abandoned vehicles. Who is responsible for abandoned vehicles? Because there seems to be so many abandoned vehicles on the island and they never get removed. And I was just wondering, what is the policy and who is responsible and is it being adhered to? Because I'm seeing no evidence that it is. And if you can't answer that this evening, and I'm sure you can, Michelle, I can see you chomping at the bit. I'm wondering whether this is something that we could make a priority for this committee in the next few months.
Well, I know it's on the list, so a list is being drawn up of things that the committee would like to discuss. And Julie, as chair, has already placed abandoned vehicles on that. I can do a very brief rundown. So if a vehicle is reported as suspected as abandoned, then Island Roads will do the initial checks through the DVLA. They will place notices on the vehicle, regardless of the visible appearance of that vehicle. If somebody comes forward and says, yep, that vehicle's mine, then that's where the process stops. So I can also tell you that 9 abandoned vehicles were wholly removed from the network last month. But there are an awful lot more cases where actually that vehicle is still, still has an owner who just isn't investing in it at the time, shall we say. So I know that, we get a lot of correspondence about vehicles that are left to sort of deteriorate on street. But if they are taxed and MOT'd and that owner has made themselves known, then there is no further powers under legislation that either the council or Island Roads can use.
That is fantastic. Thank you for that, Michelle. I'm going to take that back to my residents.
Yeah, I don't know quite where it fits in the Q2 report, but you've done it now, so we've had it answered. So thank you for that. So a couple of Councillor Blake, you want to come in or something? I've just got some questions of my own, but
I don't want to take up this debate time with that, but I'd quite like to make a comment on what Councillor Fuller's just said. But I want to do it at the right time. So I was asking you when that right time may be.
Yeah, we've got the right time. It's on my list for looking at our forward plan. Sorry, work plan. We know what we mean. Yeah. Right. I was just going to the car parking utilisation. I was just reminded of a request that came from the committee to look at the unused car parks and see if there are other uses for them. I just wondered where we were with that piece of work.
So we forwarded the previous report that was done. All of the data is contained in Appendix K. So that shows car park usage. So it identifies car parks that don't have as much trade turnover. So that's all done. We need to know what you would like to do with it. So I can recirculate that report. It's a very comprehensive report, was done a couple of years ago. It's all in the appendices. How would you like it expanded?
I think probably the best thing we can do is have it as a topic at one of our informal briefings, and then get underneath it a little bit more, and then see what members are. So I think it's going to be obviously dependent on where it is and what the community want. What potential uses there could be if it's not bringing in, if it's not serving its purpose, as well as it could be.
Yeah, if you'd like to draw up sort of a list of the topics that you'd like to dig into a bit more as a committee from that, then very happy to discuss it. We have that data in that report as the baseline for you to start thinking about those questions.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. And I was just going to go back onto to One Leisure a minute. Obviously, we have invested in One Leisure, not only in the people and infrastructure. We've got some new equipment this year, but also the marketing team. And that's been a real success, hasn't it? And I was just wondering how the learning from One Leisure can be translated across the organisation. For instance, car parking. We have a great array of different good value for money permits, but I never see we actually do much marketing about it. And can there be some learning? Can we manage to get, because we all want to see us earn more money where we can, and especially if it does offer good value for residents. Has that ever been? I know we've talked about it years ago at various committees.
It's something we've looked at previously, and interestingly, one of the areas that we are looking at is Dinosaur Isle, in terms of the manager that we're trying to recruit to Dinosaur Isle being more than just a curator, and being potentially a marketing and commercial minded person as well. So yeah, there is a need for more marketing within our services, but that would have to be a business case to present that how much additional resource could we get to do that work versus how much additional income that would attract.
I think we've obviously got a case study here, haven't we, with One Leisure, but it's absolutely, without a doubt, borne fruit, that investor save. And so talking about One Leisure again, are we looking at any further investment? You can't obviously rest on your laurels. Are we looking at any more investment into the service? I know 2 years ago there was a capital bid for improving the health suite, for instance, at the Heights. Just wondered if there's anything else coming that the commission should know about.
Not at the moment, unfortunately. Again, it depends on our limited capital budget that we've got overall as a council. And any capital budget that was over and above would have to have a business case that demonstrated income to offset that capital.
Members will be interested that, we don't want to be losing, we don't want to be going backwards. We want to keep investing and keep the money coming in, and it's in a positive way. It's the business case is there. Just looking at the grants, that was what I was looking at earlier. Who was asking about? Councillor Jarman talked about the capital investment. If you look at the grants page, on which page it's on now, but it goes in detail the individual projects and where they're at and where they're finishing up. But I was just wondering, obviously, Sandown Town Hall, that's all going to be spent up by the end of March. But I know it's almost ready, and I was wondering whether we'd have a little visit, the committee, to come and see it, because I think maybe, I've been, I think you're a local member, but I think maybe it might be really exciting if we could have a visit there. And when it's, I don't think we're going to be ready for under the prom yet, are we, at East Cowes? Because that's just planning just going in for that, isn't it? But that'd be another visit. But I think it'd be really helpful. Again, going back to Dinosaur Isle when that's ready. It's open in January, isn't it? So maybe we could, if the timings work, we could do Dinosaur Isle and we can do Sandown Town Hall at the same time. And talking of visits, I've got a role at the Local Government Association, which I really enjoy, and it's culture, tourism and sport. And I have persuaded that the July meeting of Culture, Tourism and Sport Committee, they always have an away day, and they would like to come to the Isle of Wight. So we can invite councillors from all over the country to come down and see our successes. And I think it is a real success we've got. They're very interested in our coastal tourism, obviously, and how we manage that. Very interested. We've got the second best dinosaur collection in the country, second only to the National Museum. So I think it's a great opportunity to show what we've done, working with partners as well. I'm very interested in department, for instance, and all of our other activities. So just wanted to announce that now, because I got it confirmed on Tuesday. So that's very exciting. So yeah, I think that's it from me. Has anyone else got anything to say? Do we need to vote for noting it? Do we? We have to vote. We're going to note it. Is everyone all happy to note it? Hands up, please. Thank you. I took some legal advice on that. Right, so that's course 2 done. Committee work plan, or previously known as our forward plan. So we're striking off a few today, which is great. I've got a few I'd like to add, if I may. So shall I just go first? I'll go first. So I would like the student accommodation to come forward. Now, whether just as a status where we are with that project. I don't know if there could be a decision on that or not, but yes, Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, I think we can bring that forward for an initial briefing, and then you need to take a view as a committee how you want to treat that. It's a property transaction. It's a property investment. So we need to discuss in the committee how we want to deal with that.
I think what the committee would like to look at, because we've already talked about it, and it's already one of our top priority alongside the film studio and the Green Link. I think we would like to look at the economic benefits of that. So more the sort of theory behind it and the regeneration aspects of it, how it links in with our economic development strategy, which we've just passed this evening. I think that'd be the vibe of it. I don't know where we're going to be along the road of the journey. So I had penciled in that we talk about that in March to give maybe a little bit more time to move forward with it. Would that be appropriate? So members, are you, the student accommodation? Yeah. So is everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Yep, okay, great. The next thing I've got Green Link update. Could that come to January? Would that be possible? Just an update where we are there?
Yeah, I think so. We've, as you said earlier, obviously we had a lot of toing and froing with what was previously DLUF and is now MHCLG. But they have now settled on, yes, we can have the money and yes, we can keep it for a reasonable amount of time. So yeah, it'd be good to provide an update to let you know where we are. We're recruiting a project manager, is that right? Yep, project manager to take on, you know, the ownership of it and do the day-to-day running. So yes, put that down. Would you like that as a report or a verbal update? How would you like it presented?
Report? Probably like a light touch report with a verbal alongside. We'll go for the splits on that one, I think.
There's no
I think we need to sort of check
decisions,
the,
is there?
maybe not
So-
everyone knows about it. So I think it's going to be like, you know, what it is, what we've got and where we're going with it, that kind of thing. Yeah, Mr. Rowland.
I was just going to, what you've just said, Councillor Jones-Evans, we'll come back with what the schemes are that make up the Green Link and the progress that's being made with each of those individual schemes.
Yeah, okay. I think we'd be really interested about how it going to intersect with our economic strategy as well. I think that's really, really helpful. Now I've got on here abandoned vehicle policy. So we've kind of covered that. Yes, Councillor Wright.
Make I think that it's not just abandoned vehicles. And we had a discussion about this in the informal briefing before this meeting, but for instance, I've got a massive problem in my ward with caravans being left on the highway. And because they're not tax this, because they're not MOT, you can't get rid of them. And, you know, so can we widen the scope to abandoned scrap?
Things things that have wheels.
Things that are just left on our roads that we can't get rid of. And I'm thinking of 3 caravans that have been parked in a row in my ward since before I can remember, and they just allowed to live there in perpetuity. And I think we need something to do that. Whether it's introduce a bylaw, because I think at the moment they are existing in a legal grey area. But whether we can do things like put a bylaw in that nothing can be parked on the highway for more than 6 months.
So I don't know. Slav, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Yes, we can look at that. Yes, it would have to be a bylaw and we'd have to have a revenue budget attached for then the disposal of those vehicles, because that isn't part of the contract. So we'd either need to negotiate to have that put into the contract, or we'd need to have that service ourselves. Obviously, our parking service does use vehicle lifting and shifting when required. But yes, it's perfectly possible to discuss it, just in the context of we would need it to go through a bylaw process and we would need a budget for it.
The forward plan, or do you want to discuss it at our next briefing and then have a plan from there, or do you want me to put it on a forward plan? Because we've got January, March, and then have we got one in May, April? I think March is our last one that we've actually got earmarked, and of course will be. Oh yes. Mr. Wiggins, yeah.
Yes, I believe you've got 2 more committees scheduled, because obviously then all of the next committees in the next municipal year will be led from agreement of the calendar of meetings from the annual council meeting. And we'll also have the pre-election period. So obviously we're probably avoiding any committees in that period of time because of the protection around publicity and the council being seen to be doing anything political.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking about we've potentially got a change of governance as well.
I think a lot of the heavy lifting in that particular topic might be done in an informal briefing, and if there is a way forward for a decision, then maybe that comes to the March one. But I think, judging by a lot of our concerns, a lot of that can be done in an informal setting.
If I bring the leader in, 'cause I think you've raised it earlier.
Well, I think it's got to go on the forward plan. I think getting confused. If it's on the forward plan, we can discuss that too, but it's a policy. I understand that it has financial implications, but that's for us to decide. If it has budget implication, then that's also for us to decide as a council, I'm talking about. And if we want to set a policy, I absolutely agree with Councillor Blake. They're blights in our communities, and I'm not sure how many of us haven't got these blights, but regardless of that, they're a blight in our community, and it falls to us to see if we are able to do something about it. Put it on the forward plan. I don't care if we do it informal, formal, or informal, I don't care how we do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, so put it on the formal plan and then we can discuss there. So it's there official, everyone's agreeing to that. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be good if we could do it like we do it in the harbour, don't we? We get rid of our boats in the harbour all the time that have been hanging around, and we try and recharge on that, don't we? But it's more of it's a sort of sealed unit, really, the harbour in a way, as far as its finances go. So we've done that. And then I've got another one from Councillor Jarman, unadopted or owned, or not owned, as in no one owns them, rights of ways and footpaths. Elaborate, please.
Yes, Chair. So we would like a policy, please, for the maintenance of unregistered footpaths and right of way to ensure that none are closed, effectively held hostage, with no ability to enforce third-party works. So we had the example in Totland recently where we had a footpath that was closed for 7 months. And in the end, the council had to step in and pay for the trees to be cleared, because although Island Roads had responsibility for the tarmac on the path, they didn't have responsibility for the grass on either side, and certainly not for the trees, the dead elms that had fallen or were falling from the bank. And the bank turned out not to be owned by any of the residents. It was unowned land, at least unregistered. We have a whole network of unregistered footpaths that our local parish councils have started mapping out. And if a similar problem was to occur on those in the future, we want to make sure the rights of way are kept open and not closed indefinitely. So a policy to deal with that maintenance issue, please. And that's an island-wide issue. And just to reflect back on what you said, Chair, about and others about the vehicles, we do regularly have offers in our area for somebody to come along who picks up scrap cars for free. Now, if we as a council could negotiate that to be a profit centre, now I'd be getting quite interested. But maybe that's too ambitious. But I think if there is a service that picks up scrap vehicles for free, I'm not too sure if they include caravans, but maybe with a bit of arm twisting that might be possible. There's certainly scrap value in a caravan, the aluminium value alone usually. So yeah, indeed. Let's not go there. But I think there are options that we can look at where the cost implications are very minor, if at all.
Councillor, do you want to talk about the path thing, right of ways?
I've got that suggestion.
Oh, well, let me do we just cover off Councillor Jarman's footpath that are unadopted, are unowned. Is there any
We wouldn't have the capacity to bring a full policy. We can have a discussion about it, but if the rights of way are defined by the fact that they are on the definitive map, if they're on the definitive map, then we as a council have a responsibility to maintain them. If they're not on the definitive map, then it would be the responsibility of that third party landowner. If you're saying that you would like a policy where we take on the liability of paths that are previously not identified rights of way by the council in perpetuity, then obviously we can discuss that. But again, that would have budgetary implications that we would need to then obviously have that conversation about where that budget comes from. We have a budget to maintain our rights of way, but not for unregistered paths across the island.
So these are rights of way specifically where the land that the rights of way crosses as a definitive route is not owned by anybody. So T5 in Totland,
We're on the definitive map.
T5 in Totland from Court Road to Colmar Way, the land is not registered to anybody. Nobody is willing to take ownership of it. It is on the definitive route. It is T5 recorded, and it was closed for 7 months because there were dangerous trees falling on it from the bank, and the bank was itself not registered land to anybody. So the footpath is what with the Island Roads discussion was defined in a very narrow way. They defined their responsibility for being the tarmac, which is about yay wide, maybe I'm thinking 40, 50 centimeters wide tarmac in places. And they were saying that although that is the definitive way, the grass on either side of it or the bank is not their responsibility, and therefore they would not deal with it. And in the end, the council had to deal with it by sending in people to chop up the dead elms that were falling down onto the path. So the question is, where you have not just a definitive way being narrowly defined as the tarmac, but being the pathway, which includes the land on either side of it up to wherever land is registered, making sure that we have a policy to deal with that, so that problem doesn't reoccur anywhere on the island.
That might be a specific, might be sort of a very localized issue rather than a generalized one.
I don't think it is, Chair. We've started mapping them around Totland and Freshwater, and there are very, very many paths where there is land adjacent to the paths which is not registered to anybody at all, but which could have some material impact on the right of way itself.
Bring Mr. Rowan in because he'll have something.
Yeah, I think what we need to do, Councillor Chairman, is look at that information that you've got and let's consider it, and particularly in relation to land that isn't registered. Often public land that's not registered belongs or is the responsibility of the council, and therefore there's finite resources to actually manage that land. Obviously, we need to manage it from a safety perspective. So if there are trees that are dangerous or trees that might be a hazard, we'd have to deal with those. But dealing with the extent to which you're talking about seems to me to be beyond the resources that we've got at the moment as a council to deal with. But let's have a look at what you've got there, Councillor Jarman, and let's have a discussion about how the best way to deal with it.
And if I suggest, if anyone else has got any examples in their area they know of, then please do let Mr. Rowland know.
I'm happy for the example that we had in T5 to be used as a test case for that.
Right.
Chair, can I just point out that I've had many discussions with Mr. Rowland about unowned areas of land in my ward that he says aren't responsibility of the council. So I just
that offline, if that's okay, because we've got to get through. We've got 19 minutes left. I'm not going to be extending the meeting, even if we're allowed to. I'm not even sure we're allowed to. Anyway, I shan't be. So I've got one more question. I've got one more on my list, but I will bring you in first, Councillor Fuller.
We're going to look at abandoned vehicles, not before time. One of the other things that that is an issue across the island is abandoned vessels. And we've got lots of riverways, we've got lots of rivers across the island where people just dispose of their boats. They just leave their boats, and that can be a hazard to people that use the rivers. I was just wondering whether there's they're not abandoned vehicles in any way, but they still have an impact upon the island. And I know in other areas where the when I was a member of the Solent Forum, we looked at this, but they are very, very expensive to remove. And I know Councillor Jarman's got one or he had one in his ward where a vessel sunk, and it's down to the council to remove it. And I'm just wondering how that can also fit into the abandoned vessels. I know we're looking at vehicles and other things, but I'm wondering about whether sailing craft can also be something, because we are responsible for our rivers across the island as well.
Depends where it is, I'm thinking. Mr. Rowland.
Sorry, I seem to be getting into conversations where I'm saying we can't do anything about it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm sorry, but that we are in that situation, Councillor Fuller. It's the marine MMO responsibility, and it's a coastal matter. It's not something that the council has jurisdiction over.
Okay, all right. I know sometimes there's harbour authorities that have jurisdiction, but when there's not harbour authorities, it's the MMO, is it?
Well, yeah, well, Newport Harbour, we get.
Well, we need somebody from the
rid of them all the
MMO based on the island that can be able to support the council with those kind of things. But that I think that would be maybe a way forward.
Absolutely.
Because just to provide some context to that, so in my role as a harbour master, it is a known issue, and the government are seeking a way to do that. The issue being that outside of a recognised harbour, a vessel where there is no registration system for that vessel, there's no way of knowing who that vessel belongs to, and being outside of an HRO, our provision order, therefore it can't be got rid of because essentially it's still at sea. It's probably much the same as the caravan situation in terms of it's not actually doing anything wrong, it's just been left there. So that there is some interest from the government to do something, but the problem is what. So and the MR are working on it, but it's one of those almost unanswerable conundrums.
Thank you for that, Councillor Blake. I just, want to reiterate that we have a very good removals policy in Newport Harbour, and it's actively taken up on. So my last one thing I was curious about. So this council has invested heavily in place-based regeneration since 2018, 2017, when we took on the role of a regeneration director, which was a big step for this council, and initially looking at our road assets. But we, from that, grew the place plans that we had. So Shaping Newport was the first one. Then we had Ride Place Plan, and the Cows one after that, and then we've got the Bay Place Plan. As these are involving all of our communities and our town and parish councils. I mean, Councillor Bettany, you're part of the Bay one. Not sure you called it in the end. What's it called? Building the Bay, that's it. He didn't like Shaping Newport, he didn't like Shaping, she thought it's going to be on a diet, wasn't it? I think, remember Councillor Quirk said. But I know of recent years, the UK Share Prosperity has supported that, and I was just wondering what the future of our place-based regeneration looks like going forward. Is that something that we can pick up with the mayoral authorities at all? Investments. So just curious, because I think there's so much momentum behind them. We want to keep that going. I think we're all agreed on that.
I think you and I, Councillor Jones-Evans, have had this discussion before, that the council needs to refocus on economic development. We've got an economic development strategy we've developed with an action plan, but the regeneration space is something that I think that the council needs to form a view on politically, and then give steer to officers as to how we can deliver that, albeit recognising the resources, the small amount of resources we've got since we had to take that decision to reduce the amount of investment that we make on regeneration. But you're right, it's a combination of where does the council want to sit on regeneration, what can it influence, and then how can we have that discussion with partners and with central government about the funding situation in terms of dealing with these things.
So that's the thing, is that it's about the partners. There's so many people involved now in these place plans, and they're really, some of them are just getting going. It doesn't happen regen doesn't happen overnight, does it? It's a long burn, and you need to keep that fire burning, don't you? So yeah, I think I can speak for many of us who are involved in our place plans that we would like to see that momentum going, from a member perspective anyway, and from our communities. So I'll keep a watching brief on that one then. I have put it on the forward plan, but I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but I'd like to discuss it, maybe just ask it informally. Yeah.
I just think it's a place to sit when you start to look at a new corporate plan with the new, whatever administration comes in following the elections. That there will be a need to look at a corporate plan. There will be a need to look at things to take forward in that space, and I think that's where the conversation starts, and that's something that officers can obviously support in taking forward if regeneration is a chosen priority within that corporate plan.
I think I hear what you're saying, but I think the members we have now, I think it is a priority, and it has been a priority for many years, and it's all that investment that still is yet to be realised. I mean, we're invested, but the benefits are yet to be realised, and I don't think it's up to a new cabinet, whoever they may be, just to wash away everything that's happened in the past, when we're here right now wanting this work to continue. So I think it's a strong message I'd like to send out. Thank you. Right. Members' question time. Now you can only ask a question on this agenda item subject to procedure rule 4, which means you've had to give a notice. I haven't had any questions on notice. But you can ask the chair of the committee a question without notice on any item on the agenda when that item is under consideration by the committee. We've now finished all of the agenda items, so there are no more questions. So we're going to draw this meeting to an end. Thank you very much. I've got my gavel.
Oh, it's behind you.
Oh, meeting finished.